reverb.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Swampscott School Committee regular session meeting agenda for Thursday, May 18th. We are at Swampscott High School, and I call the meeting to order. If you are able, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. And we will start the proceedings with committee announcements. And Karen, please start us off.
I don't have anything in particular. I mean, it was a long week with 3 nights of town meetings, so we probably all just want to get to this packed agenda.
All right. Thank you. Suzanne?
On Monday, whenever we had our other meeting this week, I meant to give a shout out to Miss O and Soka and Shore, because they put on a really nice multicultural night at the high school, and it was attended probably mostly by the kids that put it on and some other families, but it was really great, and it would be so nice if more people went, because the kids did a really great job setting up stations with the different nationalities and their countries, and I had a lot of really good food. So it was just nice, and it's a nice gathering, and it's nice to see parents of METCO students here, and just a nice opportunity for all of us to.
I'm embarrassed. I don't think that was on the Big Blue Blast. Do you know?
Yeah, it was.
It's been in every newsletter for several weeks.
That.
Yeah, no, it was a nice night, and it was, they tried to get people to dance. They had a dancer from Boston. She was great, and I started to think about doing it, but then I was like, because the music starts playing and you want to, and then I was just like, I'm old. But
Started some Greek dancing, Suzanne.
I know I probably could have pulled that one off. Anyway, that was great.
Great. I'm glad you went. Thank you, Suzanne. Amy?
I have nothing.
Okay. Joe?
Nothing tonight, Glenn. Thank you.
Jesse?
I don't think I have anything either.
All right. Thea?
Nothing.
All right. And I also have nothing for this evening. So why don't we just hop right into the superintendent's report? Ms.
Thank you.
Angelonis.
Okay, so several meetings ago, I brought before you the 2023-2024 school year calendar. And then at our last meeting, I believe we were going to put it to a vote, and there were some things and updates that needed to be changed. Those things are not meaningful necessarily. Some of them were not meaningful to families, and some of them were, and they had to do with conferences and timing of the elementary conferences, because we will be getting ready to move to a new school. So if you'll indulge me, I'm just going to go through the calendar again, step by step. So the first day for staff in August is August 28th, and August 29th are days for staff only. We have our convocation there. We were committed to not having professional development, but there are 3 key points that we will be doing for professional development, and I will be communicating that with staff before the end of the year so they can plan. On August 30th is the first day of school for pre-K and grades 1 through 12. As a reminder, kindergarten does not attend, because on August 30th and August 31st is kindergarten screening, and the final day of kindergarten screening is September 5th. So there's no school on September 1st before Labor Day. There's no school on September 4th. The pre-K and grades 1 through 12 return on the 5th, but the kindergarten screening takes place on the 5th, so the first day for kindergartners is September 6th. We have no school on September 25th to honor Yom Kippur. On October 4th, there is an early release, grades 5 through 12, for professional learning. There is no school on October 9th for Indigenous Peoples Day. We have an early release for 5 through 12 on October 25th, again for professional learning. Moving into November, we have an early release on November 8th, but the middle school only. because there are parent conferences. There's no school on November 10th for Veterans Day observed. We also have early releases for the middle school on November 14th and 16th for middle school conferences. And then, as usual, on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, November 22nd, we release with no lunch. That's one of 2 days during the school year that we have no lunch. And then the students in the district are closed. Students are off and district is closed on November 23rd and 24th. We have an early release day for December 6th, again for professional development, 5 through 12. The 22nd, professional development, 5 through 12. Actually, no, not professional development on the 22nd. That's the last day before the holiday break, and that is the second day that no lunch is served. Late snacks for kids that day. And then the district is closed the 25th, right through to January 1st, and students and staff return on January 2nd. We have an early release on the 10th and the 11th for the 10th for professional learning, the 11th for high school day conferences, 12:30 to 3:30. No school on January 15th for Martin Luther King Day. An early release on the 17th for K-4 parent conferences, day conferences. The 25th in the evening is marked here as evening conferences for elementary. And February 7th is also an early release. I've been mistakenly saying 5 through 12. It's everybody early release because they just have different times due to the busing situation. So that's another early release for professional learning. February break is February 19th through the 23rd. March 6th is a professional learning early release. There is no school on Good Friday, March 29th. April 3rd is an early release. If needed, that one is tentative for professional learning. And then the 15th through the 19th of April is spring break for our school district. And then May 27th, Memorial Day, we're closed. What we are doing this year, actually this current school year, and it's noted here, pre-pandemic, we did a full day of no kindergarten classes for the new kindergarten visitation day. And then during the pandemic, we condensed it and made it an early release day. You'll notice on June 6th, and this year, I believe it's, I'm not going to say the date because I'll have June 1st. Thank you. You know you're working in the elementaries when you can come up with it. So we are canceling elementary school for current kindergartners only so that the rising kindergartens can have a full day experience within the schools. And that's how we did it pre-pandemic, and it's really magical, actually. The 11th and 12th of June would be without snow days. The last day of school would be June 12th. If we have 5 snow days, we would be getting out on, looks like the 20th again. We have, we also celebrate Juneteenth, Independence Day on the 19th. And it's difficult to set a calendar like this because I have heard several comments, not just from committee, that, you know, the attendance is going to be really low. School's still in session. We have a holiday in between the 2 last days. If we have 5 snow days, it makes it really difficult. But I know families are anxious to get their hands on this calendar, start planning their year ahead. And so we will get this posted hopefully tomorrow.
Great.
So I am asking for a vote tonight to approve the 2023-2024 school year calendar.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone have any questions?
One question. The early release day on April 3rd, what does if needed mean?
It depends if one of the other ones is a snow day. We wanted to have a backup date. If for some reason we have them outlined and their agendas outlined so that if a snow day cancels an early release day, we would have that one. Otherwise, that would be canceled and we'd notify families of that.
Got it. And
You want to ask about Rosh
yeah,
Hashanah?
it's just Rosh Hashanah. Just some weird days, like they
Yeah.
fall.
It's weekends.
It's
It's
weekends.
weekends.
Yeah, in fact, I just looked at it
I was just
because
wondering.
September is awfully even this year.
Yeah.
In a
Yeah,
way that
right.
it never is.
Right.
But Rosh Hashanah is the Friday, September 15th through Sunday, September 17th.
Yeah, it's one of those weird,
Yeah,
it's been a
just-
long time since
just-
it's been on a
just
weekend.
It's been a
wondering-
long time
Just
since the
wondering why
district
that was
I
happening.
looked
Yeah.
when I first saw the calendar.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
saying. Thank you for asking. It's really nice. Anything else?
Well, just one other,
Please.
just, this is, the calendar's totally fine, but is there an appetite in the state, or are people thinking bigger picture, like getting rid of February or getting rid of April break probably, and doing that 1 week in March, or doing a long weekend in April instead of a week off?
I haven't heard any talk among the superintendents. I would be fully supportive of doing away with both breaks and having one in March, 1 week in March.
Yeah,
I mean-
or, I mean, I know a lot of states keep the February one and then do a long, like a 4-day weekend in April.
I have not heard any chatter. That doesn't mean it's not happening, but I haven't heard it through our association
Is
either.
it something we could do ourselves as a district?
So we actually talked about this a long time ago.
I
And one of the
know,
hard things about it is that it really sort of requires buy-in from the towns around us.
but why?
It's been so
I mean,
long.
I mean, moving it to March, I see, but keeping the February and then just making April a 4-day weekend? I mean, yeah, like, so just not
4-day weekend or a 4-day week?
a 4-day weekend, like taking a Monday and a Friday off,
Do you
right?
remember why?
I
'Cause
mean, I guess
remember-
that's 2 4-day weeks, right? But I feel like that's like so doable, and then we have less of an issue at the end of the school year with the June 19th, and then we also have some more flexibility for those Rosh Hashanah dates at the beginning of the year, or just making September a little more whole.
I just remember.
I don't remember the
talking
reason. It
about.
can't be-
I do.
Sports?
It can't be athletic.
No.
Yeah, well, she's right. That would not be such an issue. Switching the weeks
Right.
to March
The
was
week-
the
the weeks
issue
was the big one.
because there were no
Camps and-
camps, and the Y wouldn't have the programs for parents to use. But
If the North Shore did it, they would.
right,
Right, but that's
to her
why-
point, switching to a long weekend that doesn't really mess it
I don't know.
if it's around the same
I
time.
think you should ask MASC if you have the local authority to do that.
I think we do. I just remember that, like, there were some conversations that were happening with Salem and, there was one other town, and there were some memos that went around
and I'm
about
sure it had to do with sports because there are games that happen and things.
But we do,
But
like,
that was with the weeks.
And we also do sports
We
during
do-
vacation.
Right.
so many
that's what
people
I
have
mean.
to stay home during April
Right.
vacation because
Right.
they're doing lacrosse,
Yeah.
and track, and that kind of stuff. It's just like, I don't know. I'm just throwing
But
it
I
out
think
there as
that
something we should
idea-
keep thinking about.
Would negate some of those issues.
It certainly would. I completely agree with you.
It's easy for me to say now
That's
with
super interesting.
With no kids in school.
no kids in school and
Right.
taking
Yeah,
breaks
but
whenever I feel like it.
My children would murder you, but
I know.
Right.
I'm sure people are throwing daggers at TV if anyone's watching.
But it is a good point, you know, because it does take away some of the headaches we have.
It just
as-
also just sort of, those 2 vacations seem close in time, and then the April one seems really close to sort of the end of the year kind of stuff that's happening. I don't know. Sorry, you're like looking at me like,
You're like, no,
It,
you're evil.
it doesn't affect me anymore.
yeah, you're like,
I'm
do
ju-
what you want.
I'm just thinking, being the person that takes the children when they are on those breaks, I'm just thinking like, how would that work? Because I do that. You know what I mean? Like I nanny and I do all that kind of stuff. So I feel like it would honestly, like now that I'm thinking about it, it'd probably be better.
it would be.
Because
it would
then
be-
you would only have to pay for 2 days of camp instead of 5 days of camp.
Right.
But you'd have to think about with the Y and BTA and all those other companies that do summer camp, would they be able to start their summer camps 1 to 2 weeks early? That's
But
the
it's
thought
not even,
process.
I mean,
It
they
could be in
do,
the same
they
week.
do, like
Right.
Children's Island starts at the beginning of June, like Children's Island, the first 2 weeks of Children's Island practically has no kids at it, right? Because there's only a few private schools that are off and things
Yeah.
like that. But
I would just say that there's probably a fair amount of discussion that would make sense to have so that we're not in a vacuum.
yeah, no, I'm just,
For
it's
sure.
just,
Right.
it's just that end of the school and those last 2 weeks of school were those half days and
Yeah.
snow days and all that stuff. It would just be, it's just such a headache, and you know, those are counting on time on learning days, even though we know no learning's going on. It's like, at least we can 10?
Well, since
That-
my snow calls were all wrong this year, I'll be
Oh.
very careful this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't the only one.
You can only go up, let's put it that. way.
Thanks, yeah. I have to say, this was a really bad year. Usually I'm dead on, not this year.
I don't
Anyway,
think there was one kid who
anyway,
complained.
I know.
And it's all about the
Calendar
kids.
as it is what's
So
fine.
we're gonna need a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously.
Before we move on, can I just make a comment that really didn't impact the vote itself? Those days that we have no lunch.
Yes.
Or release before lunch, also coincide with vacations. And it just makes me nervous to think about kids who really rely on our food here to be going out for an extended period of time with no food. Do we provide them anything? Can we send them home with food?
We haven't in the past. You know, we were really focused on food insecurity during the pandemic,
Yeah.
but certainly we could have a conversation with our food services director and think about that going into. But there are, you know, there are charitable organizations that are doing Thanksgiving meals and
Yeah.
things like that. And then with Anchor Food Pantry, there's a lot more opportunity for that too. And so I'll get ahead of it next year and look to see what is happening out there.
Yeah, maybe it's just a question of partnering with other, with these organizations to make sure that they have a safety net.
Okay.
Remember, at least we used to send bag lunches home.
Right, and I was gonna ask, can I dovetail that? Is there a reason we don't do school lunch on that day?
The contract with Chartwell's,
Oh, the chart,
they
okay.
do not serve it on those 2 days.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Amy, actually, about, it is concern, I actually circled it. It is a little concerning, actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought about it until the pandemic, so that's just kind of an eye-opener
Grab
for
and
me.
go.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, something. Okay.
Next item on my agenda, enrollment of non-resident teacher students. I did not give you a handout for this, and I did not link anything deliberately, but then I had Mrs. Kelly put together some numbers for me, and I will forward them to you for your records in terms of some history on non-resident teachers enrolling their students. So this year, for going into the next school year, 2023-2024, we had 10 requests. 7 were approved and 3 were denied. I am sticking with the no elementary school students at this time. And so the denials were for elementary students. Of the 7 approved, just 1 declined. Their child is going to Essex Tech, which is a great opportunity. And 2 students have not registered yet. So if I were to give you, because I anticipated we would want some information, the requests we had in the 2020-2021 school year, we had a total request of 5, and we approved 5. In 2021-2022, we had 7 requests, we approved 7. In 2022-2023, we had 13 requests, we approved 9, we denied 4 because of the elementary. And then for next year, we have had 17 requests, 14 were approved, and 3 were denied. And so those are family numbers, but I'm going to share this document with you just so you can have it for your files. I want to say when we added this as a benefit, I think we were all really worried that there was going to be an onslaught, and I think this has been a gradual progression, and knowing they're going into middle school and high school, and we're keeping our elementary sacred at this time until the new elementary school opens, and we're talking about declining enrollment in middle school and high school, it makes perfect sense. So I don't think the numbers have jumped exorbitantly, but it says a lot about our district when employees want their children
Right.
here.
Can I just ask a quick question? If an employee has has one child in the district and a second child, even if they're in elementary, do we approve that?
No.
Do not.
So they have the option of bringing the middle school or high schooler and then waiting till that elementary
Gotcha.
child gets there.
Okay.
Not everybody takes advantage of that because trying to do 2 drop-offs just doesn't work.
Right.
So I have said that, if there are any empty slots in elementary, I do want to increase our Boston students. And so it's like 1 more year, and then we'll have the capacity at the elementary schools to enroll the younger kids.
Great. Any
I have a
comments
que-
from
I have a
anybody?
question. So the numbers, do teachers have to reapply
Yes.
each year? Okay, so this isn't like this year 13 kids, next year's 12, that brings us up to 25.
No.
It's just that it's 13 and then
No,
it's
and
12.
if you
That- like,
recall,
that's
the
full
process
number.
is not only do they have to reapply, we check in with the administrator of the buildings to make sure they are following the code of conduct. They are in good standing, and then they have to reapply
Okay.
every year. It goes out probably April, and then in the last few weeks, we've gone through the list, seen how many slots are available in grade levels.
So that's good. So
Yeah.
that it really is a slow, a gradual
Yep.
progression. Okay.
Thank you. The next item I'm going to turn over to the chair. We want to recognize our student representatives as this is their last school committee meeting.
Podium?
Yeah.
All right. I just want to thank our student representatives, Jesse and Afia, for their great work this year. I think it's certainly a lot to learn about how any school district works, the easy and the hard, and it is a lot of hard work. I know the five of us and the superintendent, anyone else who speaks with us, the preparation that goes with it, and your time as you go on to your next endeavor in your life. So please come up and congratulations, everybody.
Wait, you should be in the picture too. You guys.
Yeah, you should be, yes,
Oh,
you
you look
should.
great, come on.
And you guys all, it's like you dressed to match.
Yeah, you want to.
Let's go against the, we'll sandwich it. How's that? You guys get the middle.
Smile and say, yay, I'm done.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Again,
Congratulations.
congratulations.
I'm not gonna shake your hand. Give me hugs.
Oh, yes.
Give me hugs.
Awesome. All right.
Congratulations.
Yes, well done.
Thank you. You guys did a great job of letting us know what was going on in the building and what your fellow students were thinking about.
And more
concerns about.
importantly, they're so active within the schools
Right.
that when they couldn't make it, there's communication about why they couldn't make it, where they were gonna be. And I appreciate that, knowing that, rather than putting out the name tags and be like, well, I don't know where they are. So that, communication is everything in life, and you guys demonstrated great communication in your time here.
So I'll put you on the spot a little bit. Was it useful? Was it interesting? Was it surprising?
Interesting.
It was scary.
It's-
The
yeah.
first way, the first day, the first two, I think Jesse and I went home and we texted each other and we were like,
What was that?
we were like, what is going on? And then we had a meeting with the superintendent and she was like, it's okay. It's okay to be confused.
We got the sheets of the.
And we had the sheets all lined out of how everything's supposed to go and we read them and it was better.
I think it's interesting to see like how things work here, inside of the school, like the school calendar and everything, and how that has to get approved and everything. So I think it gives a good insight on like how important this is for like everyday life.
Could you defend some decisions?
I don't know about the April break one.
Yeah, touche.
I think my parents would be a little upset about it, but it's also not my problem anymore. You do what you want.
Yeah, some of them definitely, it makes sense. Like a lot of them make sense, and it makes sense now that things have to be, like Jesse said, approved, and a lot of things have to go through a protocol. You can't just give something just to give it. There has to be a reason, there has to be an explanation, there has to be all those things so that it can be official and so that it can be accepted and used in the correct way. So
There's a lot of accountability.
yeah.
Everybody's got accountability. I have accountability, you kids have accountability, I have accountability.
We've
they
got
have
accountability, yeah.
So it's a good lesson.
Yeah.
Great. Well, again, congratulations and best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
And
See you at
See you at
graduation.
graduation.
see you at graduation, and
Yes.
That'd be great.
um,
So
yeah,
excited.
and come back when you're on your 1 week March break. Yeah. Let us know how it is.
Yeah, the official
My
spring.
sister's at home seething. I'll come here too. Guys.
See, but the advantage, I guess, about the calendar, it was that it does sync up then with college calendars.
Right,
Yeah.
right. All right. Thank you again. Congratulations.
Exactly.
The next item is just a request of the policy subcommittee to explore a flag policy, and I want to give a little background of this and why it was brought up. Our high school GSA came to me and through the high school administration and wanted to have a great event of a pride flag raising for the month of June, and I was all in. And then something in my belly said I should probably check with council, and I'm glad I did, because as much as my heart wants to do it, council explained that if I were to allow that to happen without guidelines for a flag policy, then any organization, good, bad, or ugly, could come to me and demand that their flag get raised. And so when you think of going down that path of what organizations could want to make a statement following a good deed, it made me very uncomfortable. So I know that there's going to be some crosswalk painting with washable paint. I believe the last I heard, the Hadley stairs are going to be painted in pride colors. My heart is a little broken that we couldn't do it, but I also have to think of, as John often says, the exposure to the district and what that could create. Out of the goodness of my heart, I could have opened a can of worms. And so at some point, I would love for the committee, the subcommittee, to explore a flag policy.
And do we not have one now?
We do not have one. It's very rare that you have one. There is a case, a court case that Darren sent me a link to that I will share with you, but it's more about the guidance of what kinds of flags could be raised. So we would bring in Darren on this one. But I did speak with the advisor and Mrs. Finn, and explain that even though my heart wanted to do it, I have to protect the district in that manner. When I started going down my gloom and doom of who was
What
gonna
other
come.
flags could be?
Right.
Yeah.
But is there something else we could do that's not?
They're doing the sidewalks.
Okay.
And I don't know beyond that. I don't know if Jesse or Afia know anything that the GSA is doing, but, you know, they wanted to hold the event after school. It would have been great. And I'm always one trying to get to yes, but I'm glad I paused for a minute,
So I will add to that a little bit. I spoke with the parent that's organizing it, Kristen Sacchetti, maybe? No, that's not the name. I'll come up with it in a minute. And I put her in touch with the town administrator and the Department of Public Works, and they also are going to be assisting in making it maybe a little bit bigger. I don't know what crosswalks that they're covering and taking care of, but it's gonna be.
On June 3rd, is that?
There is
right,
a-
in town?
Well, it's actually on the last day of May, because they are doing this parent has organized with the GSA some events. So like, for example, they're gonna be painting the crosswalk that it goes from the parking lot into the building. So I don't know the details of what they're gonna be doing with the town, but they were very receptive to making it bigger than what she had originally planned.
Yeah, I think it's being embraced, and I think there are a lot of activities happening. How great would it have been to just have had
To just run the flag up.
the cattle car out here and then put the flag up, like
Yeah.
just that inclusivity of everybody. And it just, like I said, a little bit of my heart is broken that you can't just say, oh, let's do this. And those are the things, Jesse, that you learn, like, even at my age,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I want to do it. Oh, guess what? So go ahead, Hannah.
I mean, like, from the perspective of someone in the LGBT community, I think what's important is what you're doing to make up for what you can't. Because the flag thing is very tricky and it could go really downhill, like, really embarrassingly fast. So I think what you're doing with the sidewalks and with the stairs is important, and it's more about what you can do safely.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's a nice
So I
way to
think
look
it's
at
I
it.
think it's a really good gesture.
Thank you.
Also, to touch on it, the cattle cart went in there with our Discovery Point and DLC kids. And first of all, those DLC kids and Discovery Point kids are amazing. Their teacher is also here, who is also amazing. And they just, like, I had a group in there with me, and they just, like, soaked it all up. And it was nice because then I got to soak it all up. And it was just amazing that they were able to cater not only to students that are in our general education classes, but in our special education classes, and they got to learn and see and appreciate so much, and they just did it in a fantastic way, and I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, and I know you, Monday night, had verbalized that you wanted to get in there and your class
Yes.
wasn't, so I'm happy
So
that
I
you
got
did
to
get in
go
there.
and I got to teach a little bit, so I was very excited about
Good.
that, and it was just great. It was
Good.
awesome.
Good, I heard it was packed last night, so much so that they did a registration, and I do know that there, one person reached out to me and was gonna sneak in where the senior citizens had to sign up today to sneak in with the senior citizens on tomorrow morning. So it's been a fabulous experience, but, Jesse, I'm gonna keep in mind that statement for a long time, what you said, and a lot of decisions I have to make, and I appreciate that.
There's also, there's a fun run, supporting Pride Month, and I know all the select board members are doing it.
They're all
So
running?
they're all gonna participate. I don't know if they're gonna run or walk, but don't get crazy, but,
Well, I say that because we had our last board meeting of the North Shore Education Consortium yesterday morning, and for the 4th year, I'll be chair of that board. And the executive director was saying, there was a time where the chair ran the Festivus run, and so.
I ran it this year. I could be your
And
Your
so they all
designee?
said, they all said, yeah, Pam, you're gonna run it, right? I'm like, oh, yeah.
A Festivus, they have a Festivus
They have
one?
a
It's
Festivus.
actually, it was actually fun.
No, I know.
And it was like a nice party afterwards.
They run around a
at,
pole?
No, it was just like a party at Finn's afterwards.
Yes,
It was fun.
yes, so interesting, but anyway. Okay, and with that, I get to turn over my evening to several important presentations, really packed tonight with some great information. And we're gonna start with an artificial intelligence overview. I guess I wanna start this by saying there's been a lot of talk about Chat GPT and AI and what are we doing and are we talking about it? And I think the first thing that we've talked about with Mrs. Knowles and Mr. Harris is we first have to have an understanding of it, and then we have to talk about it with staff to make them feel comfortable, and then we have to have a district philosophy of, how to use it. Pam Angelakis, not superintendent, it's another tool that's out there. The kids are gonna be using it, so let's put parameters and teach them how to use it appropriately. Mrs. Knowles showed me how to do it one day, and I was having a ball. I'm like, ooh, let me ask a detailed question, and the whole thing got written right there for you. But then I have to put my voice into it. And what I took away from it was like key phrases or key words I might not think about it. But I think we're starting with this overview and then going down the path of what is the district philosophy? We can't control this, but how do we teach teachers that it's okay but to teach their kids the guidelines around it? And Mrs. Raymond told us about, the St. John's Prep. They're not stopping it, but it doesn't cite for you. So my daughter, who's in college, was doing some work recently, and she's like, no, it doesn't cite, Mom, but I can say, show me your sources you used, and I can read those articles. And there's so much to learn from it, but to ignore it and act like it's not there, and the kids know more about everything than we do when it comes to technology. So we can't ignore it. We have to kind of embrace it with boundaries. And I think that's what we'll get.
All right, great. So this actually stemmed from, I think a reporter reached out to Glenn and Pam about what's happening with AI in education. And the first thing that I saw in the email from them was, how are you blocking it? How are you detecting it? And it was just very negative. And I had already been talking to Craig about it because Craig and I always find new, we call it like our little geek squad where we find something new out there. And so back in October, we heard about chat. So we were super excited to try it out. So when it came out, it was, for us, we were like, ooh, how are we gonna use this? So then seeing the outside view, the first thing I got was an email from a history teacher who lost their mind that this was happening. Block it all, shut it down. And we were like, okay, we're gonna shut stuff down right now until everybody gets very comfortable with it. So that's really where we're going here, is that this is a tool. We need to learn how to use it. People are scared, some people are excited, and we have to understand it from both lenses. So with that said, this is what we're going to be talking about tonight. basically, just a quick overview too. This isn't a very long presentation, and we've left it a little bit open and not super detailed yet because we do think we'll be back in the fall after we plan our courses and such so that you can see more about how it changes. So looking at what it is, what it looks like in the world today, how you're using it already, the problems that AI can cause in education, and then where are we going from here. So this was the initial response to a lot of people. And it was really funny because I remember walking in and saying, oh my God, this is the best thing, efficiency, our large data processing models, we are geniuses, let's do this. And they're like, no, that is cheating. This is against the law. And I was stopped in my tracks. I'm like, what do you mean it's cheating? It's not cheating. Do you use Hey Alexa, Hey Siri, Hey Google? Do you ask people to automate tasks for you all the time? You do. You're just looking at it as cheating because that's all you've heard in the news. Let me show you. So, this was Craig and I over the past couple of weeks. We're just like, okay, look what we can do now. So we're on Instagram and TikTok following all of the AI and basically sharing videos. It's like midnight. I'm like, check out what we can do with our groceries. It's 6 a.m. He's like, really? No. We're just like sending videos and ideas and compiling. So it was kind of fun, but it keeps changing. So we're talking about a lot, but what it is basically, we've talked in the past about machine learning. We know that computers have evolved, as you can see from the history of tech exhibit up in the library, with all the computers that got bigger to smaller. Now they're super thin, we're carrying them around in our pocket, they're $1,500 in our pocket, and each time that they get smaller, they get smarter and faster, and the chips get better. So it's like a million brains all in one. And one of the sayings in education is you're never as smart as the room. The room is the smartest person. And so this is what I kind of think of AI as. It's learning. It takes in data, it looks for patterns, and then it makes predictions. And if you use it consistently signed in, it starts to learn your voice, your tone, what you need. So there's all kinds of different ways we could use this. Like last night, I was like, send me a 1,500 calorie menu with 100 grams of protein a day for the next 5 days. Like, I have to get to a dress this weekend, and it's like, just gave it to me. So that's real fun. But you're using this every day, so a lot of you are really scared about it. And I see excitement here, but people who are nervous, most of the time fear comes from the unknown. And that's what we do in education is we teach, we educate. So we need to take that fear away and really show people the positives, but also be very wary of the benefits, because Craig's going to talk a little bit about that. But just looking at all these things that you use all day. If you've ever gotten an alert from your bank saying, did you buy this? It could be fraud. It's not like a human. That's AI. It's an algorithm just detecting what's going on. Anytime you make a grocery list, if you say, hey Siri, hey Google, hey Alexa, if you use Waze, if you order an Uber, this is already AI. But we didn't call it that. We called it by big company names where a bunch of people are making billions of dollars, and we're just like, we can't use it. But they made $1 billion, we did not.
Anytime you go on a website and it says, hi, I noticed you there, it's not a person. It's literally a chatbot who's responding to your presence. And then if you ask it questions that it doesn't understand, then it transfers over to a human being. But AI is already here in everything that we do every day. It's a progression straight from like Deep Blue, the chess computer back in the 90s, to now. It figures out what we're trying to do, and it calibrates to try and get the required output.
Yeah. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, take it from here, Greg.
So, a lot of people think, okay, by the way, you may wonder what the director of SEL is doing up here. I am director of SEL, but I'm also a big old nerd, and that comes first. So,
do we trade Star Wars figurines?
So, people assume AI just figures it out for you. You put in a prompt, maybe you try a different one, and then all of a sudden you're done. You hand in the paper, right? That is not how AI at the moment works, right? Here's the comic of AI turning bullet points into a long email, and then eventually the long email is condensed into a bullet point by AI. Pretty soon we're just going to have AIs talking to each other rather than... But how to actually use AI well is actually a process. Just like you start with a calculator, and you start doing basic addition, and then when you get into higher level math classes, you learn how to do different algorithms and graph things on your calculator. AI is a process where you learn how to do things over time by changing your prompt, by editing it, by editing the output, and making sure that then the output you put, then you can spruce it up again with AI. It is an iterative process, and it's learning to use a tool. It is not just plug and play, you put it in, you're done. It's figuring out how to use it. So like with any tool or instrument, if it's about figuring out how to use it, in education, we have to start talking about how do we teach people how to use it? How do we teach people how to utilize it to save them time so we can focus on the things that are actually important? So I'm going to do a quick demonstration for you all, just to show you. One of the things that we, thank you so much. One of the things that we might do is create social stories. And social stories, if you don't know, for kids who are going into a situation for the first time or might need a little bit of prep for how a situation might turn out, we might create a slideshow to show them how it might be to come into school for the first time, how to ride on the bus for the first time, how to ride in a plane for the first time. And it's just prepping them ahead of time by showing them and explicitly teaching them the rules of a situation. I'm going to go into Canva here. Canva is a graphic design tool that we use to make this wonderful slideshow. It's also something that incorporates AI. So before, you'd have to get all of your pictures, create a slideshow. But if I click on this magic design and say, create a social story around riding the school bus, and then I click enter, AI has a presentation.
So did this just generate this? You didn't do this ahead of time?
That was it. That was as fast. Wow.
And this comes up a lot in the lower grades as well, when children are talking about something that they're nervous about, and there's a teacher with 20-something students in the room, and you have that one-on-one time. The teacher can take a minute, instead of saying, well, I'll get to that this week, and then spend an hour or two trying to look for something in like Teachers Pay Teachers. This was just made, and it's really just for individualized instruction, because the social stories help the students cope with some anxiety and such that they're having over, over situations. So I love that Craig was playing around with this and found this, because we keep playing and finding different ways as we're building our courses and presentations on this.
So this is all created on the fly. I spent, you saw 10 seconds. And now I can take this, I can tailor it to the individual student. I can spend my time doing the stuff that really matters. Mm-hmm. I'm also going to show you, and I think I need to share ChatGPT. ChatGPT is something that can help students as well as teachers. So if I have to write a 5-page essay in a month, and I want to come up with mini deadlines, and a lot of students with executive function challenges might need help with some mini deadlines, I entered that in, and it says, of course I can help you. Here, week 1, you want to select your topic. Week 2, create body paragraphs here, here, and here. This is a way that students can get services that would previously require someone like a special educator or a teacher to break it down for them. And instead, they can get something that is helping them be more functional and do their work more efficiently. This is all stuff that we can do, and again, it focuses us on the work that matters. So AI is not a replacement for the work. It's not a complete replacement for human beings. It is a way to focus us in education on cutting out the stuff that takes time but doesn't matter, so we can focus on the things that do matter. I go back to can also see exactly how much text it generated in very little time. That's not to say there can't be problems, right? AI writing tends to be flat, it tends to be depersonal. AI is only as good as the data we have trained it on. So if the data has bias or things that are discriminatory, it's going to keep those biases. And there's a lot of effort invested in trying to avoid AI having the worst parts of what we do on the internet every day. We also want to avoid dependence on technology, and data privacy and security is an issue, making sure that no one enters in personally identifiable information. That's a big no-no. AI can also what's called hallucinate, right? The problem with citations in AI is sometimes, because the AI is trained to be as convincing as possible, it will completely create a researcher, a research journal, and a full citation, and it'll look so good that you'll be like, it'll confidently tell you this is absolutely true. But when you Google it and you try to look, the citation is nowhere to be found because it'll make stuff up and it'll confidently tell you things that are not true.
It's just scary.
So again, you have to take all of this with a grain of salt. You have to proofread your stuff. This is not a plug and play solution. This is something that we can use as a tool, just like a calculator.
So just a quick story. We were reading about a teacher who graded some essays and then asked AI to grade the essays. Blind, took off all the names, no personally identifying information, put the essays in, and ChatGPT was like a half a point away. So if it was an A, it was an A- or an A+, and gave even better feedback than the teacher gave. So it was really helpful because I know that some teachers spend 30 to 45 minutes on one English paper, and so to spend a lot of time on it and give feedback, but then also you doubt yourself. By the end of the night and you've graded 30 papers, am I still as sharp as I was during the first one? Do I need to start again? Grades are due. This can really help and take away some of the burden. And some of the things that we've found is when we do such testing, the state standardized testing, and there's the open responses, that takes forever to get back because there's human graders there. So what happens if the graders become AI with spot checks? What does that look like? So what's next for us? What we're working with is the leadership team. So that's all the principals and everyone who leads a building or a department. We're going to work with them to train them as well on what it looks like. We are developing a teacher course with the technology team. So Carrie, Natalie, Sue, we're all working together with Brandy and Priscilla and trying to figure out what teachers need at each level and watching for new examples. This is a hot field. Right now it's generating so many things out there, but it's not all high quality, so we have to pick through it. And after we have that teacher course, we're going to offer it this summer to try it out, and then we're hoping during our rollout next year we are going to have some more of the teacher training for technology, and we're going to offer that as one of like 6 sessions that we're offering during the year during some of the Wednesdays. So then the teachers can take it back to their classroom with confidence as well, because the students are using it. But what we're finding is we're nervous that people will say, no, we don't want this, because there is the tequity issue. So we're always talking about equity in our school system. And if some have access to it and others don't, because we've blocked it on the Chromebooks, and the Chromebook is the only thing that a student has at home, then those people don't get the learning opportunities that those do, the haves and have-nots again, which is what we constantly come to with technology. So we want to level the playing field for all of our students so that everyone has the ability to learn and use this. And then I can't wait to see what the students do, because they're the ones that are going to take it into light speed. This is what we kept hearing, like, what's happening with the job market. And, oh, we're going to lose all of our jobs to AI. And we're saying, no, you're going to learn how to do the jobs better with AI. And you're going to be more efficient. We want to teach our students to be the efficient people and to be the ones who, I can get that project done. I know how to do this. I know how to work around it. I know how to find the answer. And that's what we do. We teach students how to think critically and to evaluate sources and data. So that's pretty much how we're looking at this.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone has questions. Amy, you want to start us off?
First of all, this is so exciting. And I wish that Mr. Kohut were here, because I would apologize to him, because I have, over the course of this past year, sent him numerous articles about AI and sort of questioning how are we doing this, because we can't put our heads in the sand. And it's not only this, but there's an app that you could take a picture of your math problem and it solves your math problem for you. So I know a few years ago at St. John's, there was a teacher there who showed the kids how to do this, so that he was working that into the thought process. So to your point, Craig, teaching them to focus on what really needs to focus on and not on the drudgery. And the idea of being able to send our kids out into the second part of their lives, whether it be college or work, already knowing how to better manage their time, by using these calendar builders, but also manage their time by using AI to focus on what counts, I think is super exciting. So the fact that you're going to sort of normalize it with the teachers, I think is, I'm really excited about this, and it seems like you guys are right on it. So that makes me feel a lot more comfortable about what's happening in the district, knowing that it's really being looked at and played around with.
One easy example I can think of off the top of my head in terms of how this will help: resumes. I managed to, who here likes formatting a resume and making sure in Word it kind of gets all perfect? I asked ChatGPT to output me a resume in HTML and CSS. It could be put on a web page. It could be output to a PDF. It had bolded all the things that needed to be bolded, and it had all the things that I fed into it as like fake work accomplishments and stuff, and I put it in there perfectly. I didn't need to spend my time doing it. I instead spent my time making the bullet points.
But Craig needed to know how to ask that and understand what CSS is, which most of you are like, what's happening? When you click on something funny and you see a bunch of weird letters and it's the code behind of it, he knew how to ask it to write the code to do, like write the code for PowerPoint. Even though ChatGPT can't generate me the PowerPoint slides, you can generate the code and then pop it into PowerPoint if you know where to go. But that, again, advanced capability. So we're helping improve our workflow, but we already have that knowledge.
So this sort of dovetails for me into, as a parent, when my kids were in elementary school, seeing how the role of the librarian changed to really be not somebody to show necessarily how to open up a card catalog and choose a book, but that it really became things like learning how to identify sources online, what's real, what's not. And so it seems like starting at the youngest ages, that this could be part of that, what the librarian role has morphed into. And I'm sure you're 10,000 leagues ahead of me on this.
Yeah,
So,
she's already working this into
yeah.
her.
So it's exciting, and to see you respond to it so positively, I think is really only benefit our district. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Suzanne?
No, I completely agree. Like the approach to let's just figure out how to use it is 100% perfect approach.
I'm interested to hear what the students have to say, since it's your world.
Yeah. I like it until I don't. And I'm going to high schoolify the presentation. That's what I was thinking in my head. As silly as that sound. A huge platform for high schoolers and now middle schoolers and what seems to be now elementary schoolers, which is scary to think about, is Snapchat. Snapchat has just added an AI feature to their regular page. And how it works is you can type in literally any question about any topic and it will spit out the answer. So being in high school, our phones are with us all the time, unfortunately. And I hate to be that kid that rats out everybody else, but there and it's not being used probably the way that you guys would want it to be used, unfortunately. And so like that just worries me, is that like, are we kind of watching it on like a personal level, and like how does that work? Because obviously we can moderate school devices, but we can't put locks and stuff. Like you guys can't put locks on our phones or whatever it may be. I just don't know how that would necessarily work outside of school. And also I just had like an idea. I was thinking that we have awesome tech ninjas that I know you work with all the time, and is there a possible way in the future for us to take our tech ninjas who are already kids in the high school and have them be the ones that teach it to high schoolers, so that it's on a high school level, so that it's more of not an adult lecturing me about what I'm necessarily doing wrong with AI, but how can I use it in a way that is still like high school, but I'm still learning the material that's being given to me, is kind of where I was going with that. Because when I think of let's have teachers use it, it's kind of just like, we had a fun toy that like the teacher didn't know about, and now they know about it, and now we've got to find the next best thing. So like, is there a way to incorporate that where students are learning from students who know how to use it appropriately in a way that's still effective for learning? Those are
Great ideas.
Great points. Really good points.
that was just my thought.
I think you have some great points there for us to explore.
Sorry, you might need to add another
No.
crazy social media app to
Well, I
your
was just
phone.
thinking that we should probably add parents into our trainings. Like, they need to
Yeah.
know what's going on, but
Oh, for
there's
sure.
social media trainings out there as well.
Yes.
But that's like a new one, yeah.
Jesse, what about you?
I guess I'll sit here. I think for me, it's like, I think it's about destigmatizing AI for teachers, because more people use it than don't. Like, a lot of people, like I have a speech class, a lot of people were talking about how they were gonna use it here and there to help with their speeches, which I think is great. Like, if you can come up with points that you can't come up with on your own, that's great. I think it's about letting teachers know that it's not like an evil thing that's gonna, take over students and everyone's gonna cheat. So I think it's important to teach them that this can be used for good. And that I agree with Afia having teenagers teach it, because I guess we kind of grew up with all of it together. So I think it's really important to like sort of show people the good in AI, because it can be really helpful.
Great.
Well,
Thank you so much.
I mean, think about it. If you're a teacher who automatically looks at it with the problems, and you want to shut it down in your class, where you already have kids who are using it, it really just is going to drive a wedge into their credibility. Because it's going to be one more thing that a kid looks at an adult and is like, "You're just a dinosaur. What can you teach me?"
Great, and maybe even the teenagers, once we work with them on appropriate uses as well, maybe they're teaching the teachers as well, so.
Maybe make it an elective, make it fun. Like, there's
Yeah,
a way, like your presentation, like, made it fun. You know what I mean? Like, I don't use it. I'm not on Snapchat, so I can't speak from firsthand experience. But like, I know people who use it, and like for them right now, it's fun because it's not being talked about in the classroom in a necessarily like great way. It's like teachers don't want to talk about it. It's this foreign thing. But
It's also a great study tool. Like, if ChatGPT were around when I had physics, I would have done a lot better in that class. So like, it's really cool that I can ask it to like help me figure out themes in AP literature.
Yep.
And like literary devices. So-
Or we learned this about
About
how,
Frankenstein.
like, force works.
Yeah,
Explain it better to me, and then it writes it really well. That's
Exactly.
great. Okay, well, thank you all. I know there's several presentations coming up, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, I'm sorry. Karen, do you have any other questions about this?
No, I mean, you're blowing my mind,
Are they
so.
Right. John?
Actually, I did have, before you guys run away, I actually did have a couple as well.
Grab a microphone.
So I think one point, actually I have a couple, just one point was I've had some experience with this, with the work I do. And I think one thing that's been super helpful is industry engagement. So, you know, we use it for a certain task or tasks, but there are other businesses that use it for similar tasks. So these groups get together and talk about what's the best way we're going to tackle these problems, or what problems have you run into, how have you solved them, things like that. I don't know if you guys have done that. I'm just throwing that out there as a suggestion. I don't know if there are groups that you guys engage with.
Every day, because this is such a hot field, there are 10,000 new businesses, new people talking about this, creating groups. There is so much going on with that right now that I think, you know, we're just kind of seeing the landscape. And I know education is still kind of reeling in terms of figuring out all this stuff. So yes, absolutely.
I would just say that I belong to, obviously, the Massachusetts Tech Director Group, so I'm presenting in September and October with the tech directors from Westwood and Newton about tech directors in support of AI, because there are districts that are not, and the ways that we're going to use it. And we're all developing courses this summer and sharing resources. So there's a lot of us in our industry definitely talking, and so many things that we would talk about, but we knew it would be too long. We were trying to make it real short tonight. Sorry, Pam.
It was a great presentation, by the way, so I should have said that at the outset. And just the other thing, I want to pick up on something that the superintendent mentioned. She mentioned guardrails, and I think some of the focus here, or a lot of the focus has been on, you know, the student, or, you know, how are we going to engage the student, how are we going to monitor the student, all this sort of thing. I think part of that discussion has to be the teachers as well. You know, guardrails for them as well, how that tool is going to be used, and you know, what the expectations are on that front as well. So, you know,
ethics around the use.
yeah, exactly. You know, how they're going to use it for their work.
And then just from me, first of all, great job. I really appreciate you taking the ball and running with this. You know, similar to John, I mean, I use it every day, and it has certainly made my team, I think we measured it 20% more efficient. You know, and it makes their job easier, really. Just some of the things that they do day in and day out, whether it's, again, the breakdown of a 6-month assignment they can put in there. And just a couple things, you know, you start to go to Chrome and Google, they are now using AI. LinkedIn has a beta to write your resume for you. And so I think this is great to teach the kids, great to teach the teachers, and, you know, to wrap everybody's hands around a technology that, you know, can help and hinder at the same time. Great job. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
And next we have our annual State of Student Services.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am Martha Raymond, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. I think I'm going into my 23rd year here. I measure it with my daughter's going to be 20, and I was not married or had a family when I got here, so it's been a long time. A little shout out to AI, one other useful tool I found for it, taking policy and saying, write this in a family-friendly version. Wow. I've been thinking about our handbook. How do you take complex policies in a way that someone could digest it in a pretty quick? So anyway, excellent presentation. I want to highlight, you just saw Craig, our Director of Social Emotional Learning and Counseling, and Erin Wilson this year, our Associate Director of Special Education. But she asked me the other day, like, how did you do this when I wasn't here? And I'm like, you know how you're like, I don't know. I guess I kind of always thought the same thing. Like, how did I have 4 kids under the age of 5? You kind of just do it. And then I also remember Mona Bloomstein, who's my great mentor. I was her Erin. So I have to say this year, I feel like we've been the most productive that we've ever been. And focusing, I think, a little bit what Craig and LaTanya said, on the things that matter. So that's really exciting. So anyway, I want to shout out to them. So in the same format, I think this will be good because it'll be familiar to you all. I'm going to kind of be talking about the financial part of special education and programming. What is a special educational mandate? IDEA, obviously. I'm so thankful for this law because it really does help us do what we do, which is provide a free and appropriate public education, VIII, and that the child receives it in the least restrictive setting, which is our LRA. That's still our mandate. This is the whole set of people in the Student Services leadership team They are all critical players. We have our MECO director, Latoya Ogumbono. We have our team chairs who head up, Mercy Duffel as our high school team chair, Christine DeJalonis, the middle school team chair, Shannon Rose, the elementary, Alyssa Brothers is our integrated preschool director and team chair. Mona Bloomstein is still chairing out of district meetings, and she loves it. Keeping her busy in a tiny little bit, but she's excellent. Nell Donato is our ELL coordinator. Rachel Sturma, guidance director. Liam Hurley is our district psychologist for elementary, so he's doing all the testing, including testing for students in private schools. I will let you know one of the interesting things, I do think pandemic related, is we are managing close to 35 students who are not enrolled in Swampscott but have active IEPs. So that is also work that we do in terms of testing, having meetings every year. We still do that even though they're enrolled in their own private school. And that's the highest that's ever been. And I do think from the pandemic. Wow. Our administrative assistant, Stephanie Leonard, and we have a literacy specialist for special education who's an incredible expert in dyslexia. So here's the essential questions. These came from my mentor, Dorsey Yeardley. What is best for the student? What is the student's entitlement? And what is the best allocation of the district's resources? I think those are things that we constantly ask ourselves. Sometimes the student's entitlement is not what's the best, and we really have to be critical about that third piece, is how, we have only one set of resources, how do we allocate them? So one thing I want to highlight, again, two things, probably pandemic related, and our enrollment drop. We have now tipped over last year and this year above the state in the percentage of students with disabilities. So we always were below. I'd like to have that a little below 20%, and we're a little bit above. So that is definitely pandemic related. And enrollment drop. So you got both things kind of happening. Our IPs have increased, but a number of students that were, our total enrollment has dropped a little bit. Percentage of students who are English language learners, that's remained pretty stable. We haven't seen a change. Actually, it dropped a teeny bit. Percentage of students who are low income, actually that fell a little bit too this year. So that's a little, a change, but it's staying fairly stable over time. This is our special education determinations rubric under IDA. We are considered a district that meets the requirement. We actually had some improvement. The numbers in parentheses were where we were previously. We have increased our 5-year cohort graduation rate, which is good. We've also increased the number of students who are in inclusion placement from 64 to 65%. That's where we want to get towards 70. We have no findings for our problem resolution systems findings, public school monitoring compliance findings. We have 0. Our indicators, we have no findings, and we have no significant disproportionality data. So those are all excellent for our district in terms of the health of our systems. So financial implications, what are our drivers? Obviously, I know there's been big discussion about the out-of-district tuition for private schools and private placements did go up by 14%. Usually it's in the 2 to 3% range. That was unexpected, and I know districts across the Commonwealth are dealing with that. It was a big. You look at if the money coming in to increase the overall budget. This is so above what we are able to support. So that is something that is a big implicator for next year, and not just next year. It stays forever. Right, the next year's probably will be hopefully only in the 3% range, but it's on top of this 14%. This is now forever built in. Transportation continues to be our FTEs. We continue. There's still although Fia, I know I'm so happy that you're going into education, and anybody I can find who is interested, I will say we do find people who become substitutes. Our college students who come back, we have. Definitely I think found some people that get in the door and then realize, hey, this could be my calling or my interest. But it is something that I'm still really worried about, that the number of applicants we have in the field really has dropped, especially in special education. So I am always mindful of that, and I do think it's something that we think about. We have an incredible group of people that we work with in Swampscott, who I'm privileged to work with, but I'm always happy when I see people going into the field. Our clinical services are increasing, the costs and even the amounts that we're doing, even the specialty things we're doing. We have several students with augmentative assistive communication devices that they have their own dedicated iPad, and a lot of times you have two. So the teacher has one because you speak to the student with the AAC software. So that, those things are all increasing. As tech increases, we are bringing that into special education too. And this is a really good thing. I think our budget for translations and interpreters is probably the highest it's ever been. But as you notice, I kind of showed you that English language learners have stayed fairly flat. But that tells me we're doing the right thing. We've actually put the resources where they should be, and I think we know that. The way we all present our information now is always coming out in multiple translations. That includes all IEPs will be translated, educational evaluations are translated, interpreters are coming to school parent conferences, coming to IEP meetings. I think it always should have been that budget, but everybody now knows and has the knowledge. So but that's a really exciting thing to me. Let's see. So, where are our students out of district? This is kind of a financial look. You can see there's a pretty steep incline. And I guess this is the part that, I'd love for people to think about in terms of the budget. Our actual FY22, this was great. We came in actually at expectation. So where we landed in December when the budget closes and it's presented to the school committee and and then presented at town meeting, we came in exactly where we thought. Last year, we were over projection where we had landed as the cost that we thought we would have in the budget. It went over and this is just tuitions, right? This is it. This doesn't count any extra staff we hired for operating budget. It was $210,000 over, and this year's are anticipated as of today, and that changes on a daily basis. One new student, and that number changes. It's a little under $4 million. You can kind of see that this year and next year are very similar right now. Where we're going to land at the end of this year and the cost of next year are right under $4 million. You might be like, well, how can that be possible? Because next year the private placements cost is going up by 14%. Well, it really matters on what's happening on an individual basis. So I'm going to kind of just have you take a look at this. So every year, a student could age out, right? They could be in a residential placement and then they turn 22 and they no longer become a part of our district anymore. They move on to more agencies who provide those services. We've increased our participation in our collaboratives, including SEAM Collaborative, which is not the one we belong to, but we are able to, as a non-member, still actually send students to. So that's why it's about the same. So a few student changes can really tip what the number is, if that makes sense. So the collaboratives did not go up by 14%. They went up by 4%. So that is why, as of today, it's about the same for the projection. That $200,000 that occurred last year, obviously that is why circuit breaker is there. You get the, when the budget closes, we have that money to be able to fill that gap. If you look at where our students, residential, private, or public, we are always, I would say right before the pandemic, we were hovering around little over 30. Right now that's higher. There's a few reasons for that. One is some students during the pandemic, when we did not reopen, remain in their out-of-district placements. We had no choice about the time to place them because we were not back full time. They could not, that March to June was no longer sustainable. The other reason is some increases in the need for therapeutic placements, students with mental health challenges. So that is increased too. So that's why we're now hovering, a little close, we did hit 39 in FY22, but we're hovering a little around 35, where we used to be around 30 to 32. I would say it's around 35 to 37, but it's still in that range. All right, transportation. This is probably one of the things that is most it's just not predictable. The best prediction we have is like what we spent last year. And I will even say it's not even predictable month to month. we have contracts, but every time a student is placed, it's either going to be an individual run, which could be $225 a day, or, and I have no notice of this, but because we belong to SEAM, we contract with SEAM, which also belongs to a lot of the North Shore towns. If that student, and I will not have notice of this until the invoice comes in, could be on a run with another student, say from Lynn or Salem, Hamilton, Wenham, going to the same school, and the only reason I'll get notice of that is that the invoice changes. It drops by half. But think about that predictability. Now that same student moves the next month, now it's back to $225. So you just don't know. So really anticipating what that cost is really hard to predict. And the number shifts. So if we have a student in foster care, and that student's an individual run, that student can cost up to $25,000 to $30,000 a year, and I won't have notice of that until the moment it happens. So think about the budget. You're supposed, right, Cheryl is trying to come up in December with, okay, tell us what you think the number is, right? One change, and there's 25,000.
Right.
So I think that's where circuit breaker does come in, right? That's why that helps give us that budget security and certainty. So I think I talked about that. All right, so let's go to the next. Additional, so you cannot, we have circuit breaker, clearly that's coming in around 1 to 1 million to 1.2 million per year that we have to use that in that. We always use we spend the entire previous year, and then last year, I think, and this year we're going to be dipping into the current year's funding, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's how we provide certainty to make sure special education is funded fully, and that is a good thing. We have grant 240, which is the IDEA grant, and that is used also for out-of-district tuition. We have grant 262, that's the early childhood grant. It supports our integrated preschool, and it is utilized for some clinical and contractual services, as well as some supplies for that program. But then just, again, the lack of predictability. Last year we had about $130,000 in grants that we didn't know were coming until we got notice they were coming in October. This year, those were zero. So again, you don't even know the funding that's coming in. Sometimes I could get a program improvement grant for $18,000, and you don't get any. I think they've no notice until the money comes like in October. So
is that because the state isn't funding it, or like why do we?
If they have extra money and they don't know, they will send it in that way. So occasionally they will have, the more money will come in and they will send it through to us, and I'll get it. Usually it's not that high, and I do think that may have been more pandemic related recovery money coming into IDEA, but usually we used to get the $18,000 program improvement grant. Which we were really hoping to get. We may still get it. Sometimes they don't. We don't even get that. We don't even know the money coming in from IDEA usually until July. So again, budget security. We don't have that number yet. I don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be in this range, but you just don't know. So there's a lot. You look at special education, real big shifts. It's in the 100,000s of the shifts of up or down. So the predictability is tough. So challenges continue. We have continued concerns regarding the acuity of need for students with emotional disabilities. I know we've got Craig Harris's presentation about our mental health screening. He's got good news to report, right? And that's great. But in this area, in terms of what kind of services and therapeutic services, that's continuing to be fairly intense. We do have an increase in referrals and number of students on IEPs, including those students I was just sharing that are in private schools, which you think about, those are resources we're spending in terms of time and evaluations and meetings, and that's different. Like, that's not something we've had in the past. Closing the learning loss, that continues. Even though the ESSER grant is no longer with us, that we really did utilize for having staff that could come in with reading specialists and literacy specialists, well, that gap is still there, and we're going to have to be very creative and systematic and efficient about how we're going to continue to address it. And then there's still staffing shortages, and I think staff well-being still is a concern. How do we get people to want to go in the field, but also making them feel supported. All right, so this is kind of something I really want to highlight. And I'll just explain it a little bit. What the state did with MCAS is it looked at FY19, the year right before the pandemic, the MCAS scores, and 22, and evaluated, okay, what was the loss? Like, how much learning really occurred, the loss, and they kind of set guidelines. If you are in a range that was wide, you're going to be in recovery. If you actually maintained or only slid a little bit, they were going to call you the path forward. And so what I want to highlight is this incredible group of people in special education. If you will know, almost all of our students with disabilities, if you would think, right, those kids would have been the most impacted. We would have been in huge gaps in huge recovery. We weren't. They actually maintained the same, which I still am astonished by that we are able to do. So we, as a whole in high school, our ELA students are in recovery. Our students in math are in path forward. Again, that's a lot of the work that Dr. Bacon was doing in terms of her implementation of an enrichment program in math, path forward. Students with disabilities, ELA and math, high school, path forward. That means they did not decrease. We held them steady since 2019. Middle school, ELA, all students, recovery. ELA was recovery with students with disabilities too, but math, again, path forward. Elementary students, ELA, recovery. This is all students, math, recovery. But Stanley actually was path forward in math for all students. But students with disabilities, so it's grades 3 and grades 4, path forward. So that means we did hold them steady. And I know that had a lot to do with all the work of us getting the students back in the building, right?
Those students were in, while others were home.
Yes.
That makes it, that's the concrete evidence.
Yes.
Do you think it also
So
has,
being in school is really, really important.
do you think it also has to do with lower student-teacher ratios?
No, because those things stayed the same. Those are very similar. I do think it's what the superintendent just shared. We got them in the building, right? And the thing that I'm highlighting for those staff, like, it was hard to come back in the building. Like,
Well, when your colleagues are home and you're expected
Yes,
to be
it
in
was
with that
hard.
PPE,
Yeah.
it was difficult.
It was really a really hard experience for everybody, but I think it also does show, like, we're back, the kids are back in the building, they have to be in the building. We need them here, like that person, teacher, student contact, and student contact, it's critical. It's critical, so I just wanted to show that, that we're still in recovery, and we still have a lot of work to do, but we did, by having the support to be like, okay, we got to get the kids back in, like, and having the superintendent's support to help us get there, like, we held those kids steady. And that, and that really, the gap, because there's already a gap for those students, right? The kids already have a learning gap. Like, if we had widened that, we would already be in a harder position, but we're not. So that's good. So I wanted to highlight that. Opportunities, I know Craig Harris is going to talk a little bit about our mental health screenings, our iReady data. It really has changed how we can look at progress monitoring, how we can really look at, every time I go into an IEP meeting now, I can pull up the iReady data for that specific student immediately, and I have immediate diagnostics on their growth within ELA and math, and I can already determine, wow, are we making effective progress or are we not? It's amazing to have, because it's a universal assessment that we're giving to everybody beyond MCAS. Like, MCAS was once a year, this is 3 times a year. So it's been life-changing, I think, in special education. I want to highlight Lisa Julian Hayes, who was our chair of the CPAC, but she is no longer. I still tell her she's our consultant. But Jennifer McCormick, who's a parent at the students with the preschool and elementary, and Leanne Miller, who's also a parent in Swampscott. They're our new co-chairs. And we actually have some exciting new families who are getting involved, so I'm really excited about that. Obviously, our new elementary school, we cannot wait for that to open and get those equities across the board and to have all the services in real time in the same place. That is just going to really alter how we do special education in Swampscott. I also think these are things that we're exploring, but project-based learning and standards-based grading, I think, are really important for us to kind of start wrapping our heads around. It really doesn't matter where you start, but it's kind of where you land and end. That's really important. So kind of what your first quarter grade is, it really is where as important as where you landed at the end, right? Were you able to bring it all together? And in getting us looking at the grading system, even from the lens of a student with disabilities, I think is interesting, but interesting for actually all grading, So I think that's something we're looking at. And I also want to totally thank the high school for really elevating in their program of studies the different pathways that students have in post-secondary plans. I really want to thank Dennis Kohut and Dr. Bacon and Rachel Sturma and Colleen Call, because they really believe it and really made sure that that program of studies did not just validate college bound, which is obviously really important, but also students who want to go into the military, students who want to go right into a trade, who want to go take a gap year. But there's all different pathways. All of them are valid. All of them are celebrated. And we have those great programs, the After Dark program and advanced manufacturing, and then soon to be, it's computers, right?
No, we're doing business
Business.
this year,
Business.
and then IT that follows.
And those are amazing things that have been added in. Like they really really touch the students that we work with in special education. So I can't thank them enough that they did that. Let's see, and I am gonna let Erin come up and talk about just two little fun highlights of things that have happened. I know I spoke to you guys the last time about Larry Eigner and the fact that he was a person living in Swampscott a long time ago. He's no longer living. He's a poet. And a relative had reached out to me. This was it a year and a half ago or 2 years ago?
It was 2020.
2020, okay, 2020. During the pandemic, and he just wrote me this rant. He lived in California, and he just wanted to tell us this story. And I was like, okay, let's do this as a student project. And I'm gonna let Erin talk a little bit about the project and what the feedback we got from the family. So Erin Wilson, take it away.
Nice to see you all. I get to tell you the fun stuff. So,
It's on the computer right now if you want to look at it.
oh, perfect. Okay, so Larry Eigner, just to refresh memories, and I'm not sure if students know about this. I'm not sure if it's been highlighted in the high school, and I'd be interested to hear whether or not you guys are aware of this. But Larry Eigner was born in, I think, 1927. He lived on Bates Road for 50 years. Due to an incident at birth, he had cerebral palsy. But the staff and his mom was a huge advocate for education, and she wanted her son to be educated. And he was privately educated until high school. And during his high school years, there were two tutors that went to his house to get him through high school and to do some college level courses.
Because he couldn't get in the building.
Because he couldn't get in the building because that was not the way of the world at this time. And the two tutors were the high school principal at the time, Mr. Dunn was his name, and there was a woman named Mrs. Blodgett, and she, I believe, was the math tutor. And they worked with him for, I think, 4 or 5 years and got him through the high school curriculum, but also into some college level courses at the time. And this really changed the trajectory of his life. He became a renowned poet. I mean, he has published, I think, like 12 books. Look him up, it's incredible. And so when this cousin contacted Martha, our Discovery Point program, which is our program at the high school for students who are 18 to 22, really focusing on vocational and life skills activities, took this and ran with it. And they created a display up in the library. Actually, if I can move to the next page, because then I can show you. So this is up in the high school library here. And if you look at the words, the students in the Discovery Point program use something called a cricket, which is like crafting. And they individually outlined all of the words. And part of what is so beautiful about Larry's poetry is he really thought about the placement of words and was somewhat inspired by some of the geometry, if you read about him, like some of the geometry that he was taught while he lived on Bates Road. And so they have created this poetry on that window. And then the other side is actually a framed original poem from him that the cousin had sent us. 2 pictures of him, one when he was young, one when he was older, and then a little biography of his actual life. And the students in the Discovery Point program did all of this, led by Emily Borden, who's their amazing teacher. And they also partnered with the photography club here. And the photography club, I guess, read some of his poetry and then took pictures, and then the students from Discovery Point selected the pictures. So I just thought that was such an amazing story. And I actually tried to get more information about this Miss Blodgett on Facebook. You can go on Swampscott past, present, and future, but I couldn't get a lot of information. People remembered Larry Eigner, but I couldn't, like, I wanted to know more about the tutor, and I couldn't even get a first name. Like, I didn't get anywhere with that. And then this is the message from his family, which is just so positive. You know, I can read it to you, but I think the key piece is that his 89-year-old brother, who's still alive, wrote, "The project at SHS has been wonderful for Larry's legacy, of course, but also to have the SHS students in 2 clubs that were involved. Both Janet and I went over all of the photos of the project and we're thrilled. Our thanks to you, the faculty advisors, and all the kids who were involved." And then he notes that there's going to be a complete biography by Jennifer Bartlett published this summer. And so he's hoping eventually maybe to think about raising scholarship or program supports to create a scholarship for Larry. And I love that idea, and you know, it's something we can all kind of think about.
Wow.
And so thank goodness for IDEA.
Yep.
Right?
Right? I mean, you know, in fact, that, you know, for him, he had to rely on the kindness of people. Thank goodness it's the law.
Yeah.
Right.
And then one last little fun thing. The preschool science fair was held like it used to be pre-pandemic again. Yay! The world is somewhat normal. And it's just a wonderful, I mean, I've attended it as a staff member, but also as a parent. And it's really wonderful. They rely on parent volunteers, but the preschool staff is amazing. The director really gets really creative, and the preschoolers get in there, get dirty, get excited, and they just learn so much from this hands-on experiences, and you can just see the joy and the excitement in their little faces.
And the parents actually leave they actually run the experiments. It was funny because I went through it during this one, and I saw one of the dads working with a group of kids, and he was just so great with the kids, and he was laughing, and I like walked out to one of the teachers. I'm like, he should be a teacher, and they're like, he is. I was like, okay. So I was like, he's great. Where is he? Could he do this? He's like, yeah, he's a teacher.
Oh my God, there's little.
Anyway, that I think is my ending, right? All right. Do you guys have
Thank you.
questions?
Karen?
The best. Nope, it was fantastic. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I had one question. Do we know if the governor's budget has any way to help with transportation in it? Wasn't it supposed to have some special ed transportation money for districts?
So they're increasing the amount of reimbursement for circuit breaker. You know, historically, transportation was not allowed to be reimbursed. But we are. I will say the hardest thing with transportation right now is cost, but it is also the fact that there's an incredible shortage of bus drivers.
Right.
Like, it's every day that they call.
But you can use the money to reimburse parents that are driving, can't you?
So we can get through circuit breaker reimbursement for parent settlements, where we do reimburse families occasionally, where it works for the family and it works for the district.
Sometimes.
Yep. So that will happen.
I just thought there was going to be a specific amount, but must
I
not have made the cut.
Well, I haven't seen, other than Chapter 70 monies or the grant 240 or circuit breaker, there aren't any other funding streams coming in. That's it.
And I just had one other question.
Yeah.
When you showed the bar graph that showed that Swampscott is now above the state average and probably pandemic related, it doesn't really make sense to me, because the state average should be higher.
But our
too.
enrollment dropped too. So the students that I was talking about, in terms of the 35 students that we're monitoring, they're in private schools.
I see what you're saying.
So it's both.
Right.
The number went up, and
Right.
you're comparing them against the total enrollment, right? So it's two things happening at once.
I'm just thinking the state is having the same issues too.
Yes,
But-
so yes, that's why I look at it, right? We want to compare ourselves to the state, so
That's
it's
what
something
I'm
I'm
just saying,
concerned about.
The state should be going up as we're going up.
Yes, and we went up a little higher.
Yeah, it's just.
So they went up, but we just went up more.
We went up more, which is why it's an alert, from my perspective, right?
Just wanted to just verify that, or.
But a lot of it also is it's hard, you know, when we look at the questions to take a look at student with an emotional disability or student with specific learning, there's questions you have to ask. You know, has a student had, has this been over time, over different settings, longer than 6 months? Has there been adequate instruction? It's really hard to, you know, the pandemic has been so long that it's really hard now to, you can't really say, oh, there was COVID anymore. It's too hard to tell. Like, you know, right? So we probably are inflated for our students with specific learning.
Right.
That is probably an inflation. That number will likely come down. Although the state regulations are, once a student is on an IEP, you will likely not come off it, at least until the next 3-year reevaluation. You actually, even if you suspect that, wow, maybe we made a mistake, this is great, the students made such progress, even if we then say, okay, well, we'll do an early reevaluation, technically, you know, that the parent could say, no, we're going, we don't want that till 3 years, we're going to stay on. So I think that's part of the issue that's occurring. I mean, I think that's why having a real strong multi-tiered system of supports, it's critical to help prevent that from occurring. But so those are, and also I would say the mental health one is real. The acuity, that's real.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm not.
That's real. And that was happening before the pandemic. It just became exacerbated during. And not to mention the technology, Thea, that was a new one on me, that Snapchat has AI. I did not know that, but
I'm sorry.
I know. But I think those, you know, what the way kids are, the world that they're experiencing is so different.
Right.
And even we're seeing it also in the kindergartners coming in. The way, before technology was available for little ones, the world required a little effort, right? A little learning how to wait. You had to go to the store to do everything. Now people go boop, and the sneakers show up at the front door. And so the little ones who come in, like they are constantly engaged with entertainment, right? I know people have been out at restaurants, or you're in a waiting room, and what do you see? A little one, and they've got a phone. Now imagine coming in, you're 5, and then there's now 22 kids, 1 teacher, and you're like, where is my entertainment? What do you mean we're lining up and putting our lunch boxes away, and you can see the kids bumping and then dropping the box and putting it up? Like, they're just not used to it, so they've had no practice. Their tolerance for it is so low, but it's not their fault, right? They're experiencing a world that's so different. So there's a lot of work that we're doing in kindergarten. Afia, I know you're in kindergarten, right?
They're amazing.
Yeah, they're so.
But they
are.
But you're right. They could sit on iPads all day.
Yeah.
And it's like, we set 30-minute timers, and you have to broadcast it to them. You have to say, you have 15 minutes. When the duck is quacking, we shut it off, we put it in the box, and we put it away. And some of them look at us still, and they're like, what? Why?
Yeah, it's hard. It's very
hard. Yeah.
Very entertaining, and it does not really translate into understanding of the 3D world. So little ones who came in had a really good understanding of how their hands worked and how the physics worked, how you move things, and that's not the same little person we're getting coming in the building. We have to actually teach that.
Right. For example, not to butt in again, but we got kids in February who still didn't know how to hold scissors. And they were 5 and 6 years old, and they didn't know how to hold a pencil, and they couldn't write. And it's like, I remember being 6 years old, and I was cutting away, and they don't know.
Yeah, they used to cut their hair. Yeah.
They don't know, and it's sad, but it's also the reality of it. So how do we adjust, and how do we fix it?
And we are. I will say that people are very agile in adjusting, but it requires a lot of sports training, and it's not easy.
Joe?
Actually, it's more of a comment. I picked up on something you said under the opportunity slide, where you talked about the standards-based grading. And I don't know how far down the exploring part you actually are on that. I was curious, but I know I've heard a little bit about this, and there's kind of 2 schools of thought, that it's great, or it actually puts more stress on the students because they're more focused on test-oriented results, that sort of thing, as opposed to the individual tasks. So I guess going forward, again, I'd be curious how far down you are, but as you go through that process, just, be deliberative and not just roll it out and
So I'm not in charge of the grading, which is probably, what we
Right.
do, we're doing on a very individualized basis for, and we have students who have a variety of experiences that might be preventative of them doing an amount of work, but is not preventative of them actually demonstrating the skill set.
Right.
And so that's how we view it. You shouldn't be penalized for the fact that you couldn't do 5 papers when you did 1 paper that actually did show all the critical skills that the Department of Ed actually requires. So that's how we view it now. But yes, in terms of changing the high school, that's not in my purview. I'm not doing that.
Understood.
So this is more IEP related.
I know what you're speaking on.
But I think it's an interesting idea from a special education perspective.
Right. And I guess my only comment, just to kind of tie that off, was just, you know, again, be deliberative in that process. Again, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do, but just from what I've seen on this, you know, it can kind of cut both ways. So.
Sure. Well, those are IEP team individual processes, you know, in a meeting with parents and teachers and team chairs. That's the only way those things happen.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Amy?
So my eyes popped open when you said that there are about 35 kids that you're managing IEPs for who are in private school. Are those kids that are going out, that we're placing out of district?
No.
So does the state reimburse us for anything there?
No. So you have a right, if you're a resident of Swampscott, you have a right wherever your child is in a, not charter, because charter's their only LEA, but if you're in a private school, St. John's Prep, Coleman LL, Tower School, St. Mary's, you come back to our district, request an evaluation, we complete a full battery. Should we find you eligible, you actually stay on an IEP. We're not providing the services, but we are required to then meet every single year and then do a 3-year evaluation. So that is a requirement. That is.
But we're not paying the tuition.
I'm gobsmacked. Well, no, I mean, I know that we're not.
They
paying
don't come into
tuition,
our count.
But the amount of our professionals'
Yes.
time.
Our resources
And
are, yes.
that is
It's
a lot,
It's-
especially in a district this size.
And it's bigger than that's ever been. Yeah.
Is there a way, obviously, that's only something that we can sort of look at, but is that something that you could track?
Oh, yeah.
So that we get a sense, I mean, not that there might not be anything to do about it, but other than.
Well, is it gonna go down again? You know, right now, also
Will it?
students, well, we have students who are homeschooled too, they also have the same. So we have students who are homeschooled that we also follow on IEPs.
So, if they've gone to private schools, we lose that head count.
Yeah.
In terms of just, that's that one student that they're paying us for, the town, that the state is paying us for, but the special ed services in particular are more expensive because of the amount of expertise involved, i.e. you and your cohorts. So I guess if we could sort of keep an eye on the trends there, that would be very interesting in terms of how the school committee advocates for dollars.
And interestingly, in the actual 240 grant and the 262 grant, you have to do a count of students who are homeschooled in our district who, if they are eligible for an IEP, a proportion of the funds has to be set aside for their education, even though they're homeschooled. So
in the same way that you might have to set aside specific monies to send a child out of district, it's the same.
The amount is much reduced, so you're not implementing the IEP, it's called a service plan. Districts actually have a private school within their geographic boundary, have to do it for all students, not even residents. Anybody who goes to that school within your geographic boundary who is on an IEP, you also.
So if we
set
had a
aside
private
funds.
school here in Swampscott.
Yes,
we would have to do that.
a bigger chunk of that money would go towards that.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. It's much smaller. It's not the same entitlement as an IEP. It could be professional development, it could be tutoring, but it's still a chunk of the money.
Well, and also conversely, it's only for one child, whereas if there's that child who's in school, you can pool resources.
Sure. Yep, it's just it's also another administrative thing that we have to do.
Right.
All right, and then one last quick question, I think. You mentioned AC software, what's that?
Assistive augmentative communication devices, so those are devices that actually communicate for you. So we have students who may be nonverbal, may have autism, may have cerebral palsy, could be selectively mute, and actually will have a choice board on there with different menus and options so that they can communicate their basic needs, have conversations but you also have to have the pairing iPad, because the only way to teach somebody to use it would also be for the person
Use
who's
it.
communicating with you to use it too.
Right.
So we also do that.
Okay, that's it for me.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I actually have, if you
Oh,
don't
wait a
mind.
minute.
yes.
I have a couple of questions. So, yeah, the 35 number certainly caught me as well. You know, and I obviously know that that's a responsibility. You know, I get that, I know that. Do you have, can you share with us just a little bit of the age bracket of the 35? And maybe just goes, you know, 3 to 10 and 10 to 22.
I would say a majority at the moment are elementary.
Right,
And so again, that's where it's hard to know.
Right.
Is this a COVID learning loss issue?
Right.
There are usually the middle school and high school, our kids were just monitoring.
right,
So they were found eligible several years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
but we have to keep, until a parent decides to withdraw them. So withdrawing from the school is separate. from
Right.
Withdrawing from special education.
Correct.
So you have to do both. So if you don't withdraw, if you withdraw and go to, say, I'm going to St. John's Prep or going to Conal, but you don't withdraw special ed, we monitor you, we send
Right.
out evaluation consents and meet.
right. Are we seeing any anomaly numbers for sophomores and juniors in high school?
I would say no. This year, the high school was on our lower end.
Okay.
The highest referrals were the K level was
Right.
pretty high.
Right,
And I will also say middle school, fifth grade, that's where the other bump is.
great. And then just as a process, I mean, this is great information. This, I agree with John. I think I'd like to see this prior to our discussion about budget. You know, so if we could maybe do this twice a year, maybe it doesn't have to be the entire presentation, but especially some of the slides, you know, regarding who, which student is going where, you know, at least a thought about where the dollars will look at the end of the year. Because, you know, as we see is, you know, you went from X million to 4 million, you know, that's a very large number. And I think the earlier we know about that, the more advocacy that we as a group can do. And then
The nice thing is my spreadsheet that I share with Cheryl is in real time.
Right.
So every move we make, she can see in real time.
Right.
And also I have to thank my tech person over there who actually, these slides are very easy for me to do. They're backed up into a
Right.
spreadsheet now where I just hit update and it immediately populates with my new information. So very easy for me to do anytime you want. I do it at central office once a month.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Yes,
This was
you're
great.
welcome.
Thank you.
Seems like a great presentation.
I've done it before. I did it at the,
Yeah,
whatever
I'm
the
just saying, that
finance
just
people.
to explain that, yeah.
Yeah,
The financial
Sorry, thank you.
pieces.
Didn't mean to-
no, I agree
And
with
last
her.
but certainly not least, we have Mr. Craig Harris, our Director of SEL, with the State of SEL and Mental Health Services.
Could start us off with a mindful moment, but I think we might fall asleep. I'll try to keep it lively and move it along. I'm here to talk about SEL and mental health. I'm going to be talking about 3 overlapping areas: SEL, social emotional learning, mental health, and school assignment. So, starting off, SEL. Why SEL? SEL is teaching kids not just the academic part, but it's going to help with academics, mental health, skills development, and school climate. These are all the areas that are improved with a good SEL program. Why SEL? For every $1 we spend on SEL, it's estimated that we get $11 back in terms of avoiding needs for intervention and remediation. That is a pretty stunning number when we think about how much money that we can save by investing in early intervention efforts and prevention efforts. What is SEL? SEL is these 5 areas: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. I know Pam has in her email signature and in the superintendent's conference room that I'm in every day, intelligence plus character. That is the goal of education. SEL is the character side of that. It's also the thing that makes the intelligence worthwhile and drives the intelligence. There's a lot of talk about SEL and mental health. There are some key differences, though. SEL is what we want to grow in our students, what we affirmatively want to give them in order to be constructive citizens and people in the world. Mental health is the things that our students carry, might be signs of anxiety, depression, trauma. By the way, these images are both AI generated, if you were wondering. This year, I've had the good fortune to work with the SEL Steering Committee, and I'm just going to make sure that I have all the names. We have Lexi Van Ardsdale from the preschool, Sue Sheehan from first grade over at Stanley. Liam Hurley is our elementary psychologist. Danielle Kuczynski is our middle school psychologist. Katie Wynn is in our 5th grade. And Peter Franklin is our high school ELA teacher. They have helped me in terms of creating a resource map of where we are with SEL and SEL initiatives in the district. They have helped with creating a vision of what we want SEL to be in the district. And they have created some work with using a curriculum called the Zones of Regulation. And they have helped to place the zones in every building, in every school, in order to give a district-wide vocabulary for emotional regulation. And that's the first small step we're taking, but it's significant because it's showing that we're actually putting this into practice and we're walking the walk. We're not just staying in committee and talking. In terms of working forward and moving forward in terms of our SEL programming, these are SEL programs we've used in district. We take a look and we try and see what age range, whether it is something promoted by CASEL, which is the premier SEL organization, whether it's evidence-based and research-based. And we are now taking a look at 2 programs. One of the things we heard coming out of the pandemic was kids really had trouble socializing. Maybe individually they were fine, but when you get them into a group, you started to have problems. They didn't know how to play together well. They didn't know how to relate to each other well. When problems arose, you didn't know how to solve those problems. And so we started to look at a program that could really address those social issues. The other thing that we heard a lot was emotional regulation issues. Being able to calm down, being able to regulate yourself throughout the school day. And 2 programs that we are looking at piloting are Harmony SEL, which has a general focus on social skills, and Mind Up, which is a program that focuses on the emotional and cognitive skills involved in emotional regulation. Harmony SEL is something that we will be slowly rolling out. We want to make sure that our teachers get trained on it. We want to make sure that our teachers get all they need in order to understand the program. And we make it something that is easily digestible and something that they can easily do in their classrooms. Mind Up, as I said, is focused on that emotional regulation piece. It's actually through the Goldie Hawn Foundation, and it focuses on a lot of mindful practices. We also have some good stuff going on at the high school with a course called Mindfulness, Happiness, and Good Life. Laurie Santos is a professor at Yale, teaches the most popular Yale class ever to exist called Happiness and the Good Life. Peter Franklin is our local mindfulness expert, and he folded in mindfulness with a high school focused curriculum from Laurie Santos. So we have been running that this year.
What class is that?
Mindfulness, Happiness, and the Good Life. And we took the full title and just put it in there. Talking about mental health, we continued with our efforts of mental health screening this year. We went from screening 515 students last year to 624 this year. The basis of this screening is giving very quick ways of taking a look at anxiety and depression. We're not diagnosing anything with these screeners, We're not saying you have anxiety, you have depression. What we are doing is we're looking for students who might need extra support. And what we're doing is we're asking the question to those students and inviting them in and saying, we can help. This is from last year. I presented these numbers. We were looking at a little bit more anxiety versus depression, but we were looking at a reasonable number of students, and it actually matches with our MTSS, multi-tiered system of support model, where we have 5% in that tier 3 who really need intensive services. We have 15% in that tier 2 who need a little bit less intensive, and then we have 80% in that tier 1, which is universal. This year, we have some improvement, and I have to say we're moving into a better place. This is not saying that there are not students with mental health difficulties, and this is not saying the acuity of those students in the top percentages isn't greater than what we've seen before. But I think we are starting to move in the right direction. This is, again, not to say everything is perfect, but we're moving in the right direction, and I think a lot of the work by the counseling staff is why we're seeing this, as well as the general movement away from the pandemic. Again, this is our MTSS model, right? 1 to 5, 5 to 15, 80 to 90% in terms of those percentages. We're approximating that when we look at mental health screening. Why do I have faith in those numbers? We gave an anonymous survey at our high school called the I Decide survey, and it actually asked a lot of the same questions that we ask in the mental health screening. It turns out whether we ask it anonymously or if we ask it with identifying information in order to be able to follow up, we get the same numbers, right? These percentages are basically identical. That, in addition to the fact that our numbers were fairly stable year to year, that really gives me confidence that this is not just a fluke. This is the number of students who are willing to say to us, listen, I think I might need some support or might need some help. It's never going to be 100% one-to-one every student with a mental health issue, because some students might not want to bring that into school, and that's totally okay. But we want to make sure that we're offering what we can to the students who want support. Talking about school climate, one of the other things that we did this year is the belonging survey. Sense of belonging is something that undercuts everything we do in school. In order to be able to learn, you have to feel like you belong. We gave every student in grades 3 through 12 this belonging survey. The survey was different, grades 3 through 5, than it was 6 through 12. 6 through 12, we started adding identifiers, and that gave us a little bit more of an ability to disaggregate this information. And what we found was generally encouraging. Over 90% of our students feel like they belong at school. And 94% said that they are open to having friends who come from different backgrounds. We do have students who don't feel like they are respected in our schools. And that is especially highlighted among gender diverse students and students who identify as LGBTQIA. We also have work to do with our students of color. And when we talk about school climate, it's good that overall we have good school climate, but we have to figure out what student groups do not feel welcome, what student groups feel like they don't belong, and why. And we've done some of that work. I attended a Students of Color Association meeting. I attended a GSA meeting where we had really productive conversations around these topics. And the key word that I heard was respect, and trying to figure out why students didn't feel respected and how we could increase the amount of respect we got at school. Some other SEL and mental health highlights: we're continuing to develop our MTSS system. We continue to use funds from the SEL and mental health grant. We participated in a DESI Academy around developing SEL and mental health. We have over 40 staff trained in youth mental health first aid this year. That's in addition to about 40 staff that were trained last year. We have increased partnerships with the Essex County Learning Community, and we're working to pursue a partnership with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And we've done a lot of work around database decision-making and our data systems. I think that is my final slide. I'd like to just say thank you to the helpers. Mr. Rogers is, he coined that term, look for the helpers. I have the counseling staff on here, school counselors, school adjustment counselors, school psychologists. They are absolute rock stars, and they have done tremendous work in very challenging situations. This year I decided to add school nurses into that group as well. I could add special education teachers, administrators, ESPs, tutors. There's a whole group of people who help make our school a safe and mentally healthy place to be, but I just want to highlight these people tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. That was fantastic. Amy, thoughts, questions?
I have no questions. I just want to say thank you. I feel better knowing that you do this work.
John?
Also, thank you for that, very informative. Just looking ahead, is there like a horizon risk or anything out there that, it's like I'm concerned about or I'm thinking about, anything like that?
I think one of the things that we continue to do is figure out how can we figure out the impact of our work. How do we know when we are being efficient with our resources? How do we know how we can, when we're actually making an impact on a student's mental health? And how do we progress monitor and move forward with that work? I think that's one of the things that we're thinking about. I think there's a lot of really exciting things on the forefront. Most importantly, I think getting SEL instruction in place is going to be a huge game changer. When we think of that $1 to $11, that's putting it into economic terms. But when you think about the human terms of what that means, it means that we're decreasing the amount of students feeling failure, that we're decreasing the amount of students who are being bullied and decreasing the amount of students who are experiencing mental health crises. That's going to be a huge game changer for us going forward.
Suzanne?
Yeah, just thank you. It's like Amy said, I feel better knowing that you're at the helm here. I was just thinking, all this support for students. Do we have programs in place in district for teachers for some of this stuff? Like, I just feel like all this support and all this sort of surveying the students about these things we should be thinking about making sure our educators. I mean, I think happier, less stressed educators will obviously make happier, less stressed students.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. One of the other benefits of SEL is better mental health for teachers. Because teaching SEL, teachers internalize the lessons and they use the same strategies. It's the same strategies whether you're 3 years old or whether you're 50 years old.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. And you say about 80 teachers have sort of been through that one training.
First aid. And
yeah.
we did do a survey focused on teacher well-being last year, and that was presented to leadership, and we went through an analysis of that as well.
Remember we saw those Zen dens in schools we visited? Yes. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, they had rooms for the teachers to just decompress in. It's just nice with the yoga mats and the candles.
Okay.
Well, I echo, thank you. Again, I was just wondering, just sort of across the board, when we do have to refer people out, are people able to get to a therapist? I know, like, even a year ago during the pandemic, it was very hard to get an appointment. It was very hard to find is that easing up a little bit, or is that any better?
Tiny little bit.
Yeah.
It's starting to, we're really, really lucky that we have the interface system in Swampscott, because that allows us to be plugged into a greater network of therapists.
Good.
We're really lucky that there's still some telehealth work being done, and that's being allowed, because that helps a little bit. I think it continues to be a challenge in terms of outside resources.
Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Harris, just from me, this was a great presentation, thank you. If you could wave a magic wand, what are the two biggest challenges you and your team have? And what could we do to make them better? Money not being an option, not being an hindrance.
I think the same thing any school official or administrator would say is time and money, time and people, right?
Right.
Trying to find time in the school day, trying to find time and the ability to train people well. A conversation I've been having in the secondary is how to make it so it's not SEL or academics. It's SEL integrated into academics, so it's an and there. It's trying to find all the materials and a way to get people trained up on it when there's so many different things that we need to be doing.
Great. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
I just think of where we started 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
And where we are now. And I knew you were a rock star then, and you continue to be a rock star, and I thank you for all you do.
You've been with the district now for 9 years?
I interned here when I was still working on my school psychology degree.
Wow.
Dr. Bob Trant brought me here, and then I stayed and never left.
That's right.
Oh, thank goodness.
Thank
That
you
must be-
all.
Yeah.
Wonderful
Yeah, thank you.
presentations. And we do have one more, so I don't want to diminish that one. Thank you so much.
All right. I really don't have any updates other than a question is, and I think you alluded to it earlier, is the cattle car, and you share with us how you think it's going.
It is going phenomenally. Every block of time has been used. Tomorrow morning, I was saying that, first of all, last night was the public viewing, and there was such a great number of people that they had to register, and some people were disappointed that they got shut out. So I received some emails this morning, and there were a few, Heidi Weir from the senior center there said there were a few slots, so we're trying to get a few
Right.
people in with them. But Athea was in there with Mr. Bennett and his kids. The reaction is phenomenal, and it's really incredible, so.
Great, awesome.
I'd like to just add publicly, I had a conversation, a very brief conversation last night with Rabbi Rogozin, who does have a child here at the high school in, I think, 10th grade, who was able to partake in it was the 10th graders specifically who
Got in first.
in.
They were the ones that needed to be scheduled.
But I had a very brief conversation with him last night, and he was very complimentary of the superintendent and said that it was really, I hope I'm not misquoting him, but that he really very much appreciated how there wasn't a moment's hesitation when you had to make any decisions about this, and that it was very indicative of who the superintendent is, and I couldn't agree more, so.
A very memorable experience for our students.
Great.
And our community.
And just to dovetail what Amy said too, I really appreciate that when you brought it to the table, you just immediately were on it, so thank you for doing that.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
All right,
So, under Director of Finance, in her absence, I will speak for Ms. Stella. We have had several conversations with Mr. Bennett regarding driver's education program. The committee is aware that we've been discussing this through our interest-based bargaining. We're back at the table talking about stipends and things like that. But it's been a couple of years that Mr. Bennett has been asking to talk about what we're charging as a program and the difficulty in getting teachers for this program. And so we're here to present, request a vote for a long-range plan for an adjustment to our program fees. So I will turn it over to Mr. Bennett. Thank you for being here, Joe.
Of course. Thank you all for having me here tonight. It's truly a pleasure, and thank you for all your work. So as Ms. Angelaka said, I'm here to kind of outline where the program is, has been, and kind of where we need to go in the future. I believe all of you have very in-depth understanding of driver's ed because all of your children have gone through our program in some capacity. So you do know the good, the bad, and a little bit of the ugly as well. We are one of, I think, 10 schools left in the state that has a driver's ed program that's really kind of within the confines of our building. I think decades ago, kids did driver's ed as part of their school day, and obviously that changed over the years, but we are still to this day one of the very few in the state that has it really kind of incorporated as much into the fabric of our school as it possibly can be. So the issues kind of stem definitely back before the pandemic. Were obviously a challenge during the pandemic and continue to be so after the pandemic, just like a lot of other things. A lot of it's tied to our tuition, which is set by the school committee. So as Ms. Angelaka said, over the past few years, I've always pushed anytime there's been union negotiations around contracts to look at these. So I decided to do a deep dive because I needed to obviously be able to compare apples to apples. I can look at privately owned driving schools and they can do their thing because it's a business. But I need to have numbers for programs that are similar to ours. So as you can see on the screen, and have you guys your packet in front of you. So I honestly can't tell you the last time we did increase the tuition, but it's been at $575 for quite some time. And you can see comparative when we look at 6 or 7 other high school programs across the state, none of them being in this area. Marblehead used to have a school within their program within their school that's been closed for quite some time now. Their average tuition is $725 and we're charging $575. What I can say to our closest local competitor that's a privately owned driving school, they charge $900. And we regularly lose students either from the get-go when they're looking at a program to choose, or at some point when they've done the class with us and they want to do their driving lessons. A local program that's privately owned is charging well above what, when we compare apples to apples, this would be an apples to orange comparison. But families are willing to pay quite a bit more than even the average would be for a school-connected program. So the tuition rates, of course, impact what we can pay for instructor hours. Driver's ed consists of 2 different major components, in-car instruction and classroom instruction. How we deliver those hours have changed quite a bit, quite a few things over the years to try to attract more students. Most of you probably remember dropping off your student at 7 a.m. And I always apologize during the parent meeting for that because it threw a curveball into your schedule. So I have made some changes that I think are to the benefit, of course, our students, families, with the goal of also bringing in students from other communities. So we move the class, like most other driving schools, to weekends. So there's the classroom component, which is 30 hours, and then the in-car component, which is 12 hours of driving and 6 hours of observation. So we are currently earning $18.35 per hour. The average driving school program that's a component of a high school or part of a high school is $32.86. So we see a pretty drastic difference there. As you know, as you sat in the car with your teens for 40 hours, it is not, it's not for the faint of heart. So when you are looking at such a disparity in rates of pay, it's, there's not a lot of people who are going to jump at $18.35 an hour before taxes to sit in the car with the teen. We obviously have a break. It's a little bit easier for us, but it's not something, there's a long line of people looking to do this. So it is something you have to want to do, and obviously a little more financial incentive is helpful, and I think will help us attract more clientele that would be interested. For the classroom instruction, we do that over weekends, like I said, and this is a pretty fixed cost. We look at somewhere between 15 to 20 students per year doing this. There's not a lot of cost associated with that component of driver's ed. We're in this class. We use the vehicles, but we're mostly fully digital. We talk about our personal experience, so on and so forth. So there's not a lot of costs kind of rising there. The average, we currently make $25.44 per hour. The average is $36.36. So you can see almost an $11 per hour difference between those two. The director pay, I won't kind of delve into, but those numbers there for you. I know that's ongoing. And my understanding, it's in a pretty good place, which makes me happy. When I looked at different stipends across, of course, our school district, but other driver's ed programs, it is one of maybe a couple to a few at best that are year-round. My job for driver's ed actually sometimes is busier in the summertime than it is during the school year. So there's a lot of hours that go into it. I would say easily 125 to 150 hours. And it goes everything from R&V audits on a quarterly basis, dropping off cars to get repairs, dropping off cars to get inspected, deciding when we do classes. There's a lot of work involved with it. So I'm glad to hear that's probably moving in a better place. So in our discussions with Pam and the Director of Finance, they essentially outlined a 3-year plan to get us to where our apples to apples comparison kind of really exists, increasing the rate for tuition in order to offer better hourly rates for in-car instruction and classroom instruction.
So I'd like to call their attention to
Sure.
the memo. Mrs. Knowles, can you pull it up from the agenda? Oh, okay, so we have to escape out of here. You all have a memo, it was in the folder, and if you have a hard copy, you will, I'm just gonna, I wanna say for the audience, what we're proposing, because this is what you would be voting on tonight. As Mr. Bennett said, there's 3 components to this. There is the director's stipend, which is being worked out through the IBB process back at the table for stipends. So we won't be, that's not part of this proposal tonight. The part of the proposal shows up in paragraphs 5 and 6. And so what we are proposing is a 3-year plan for the fees, program fees. And it's actually outlined at the bottom of the memo. So for school year 23-24, we are proposing a $75 increase, and the program would go from $575 to $650. The next year, we're also proposing a $75 increase, increasing the program fees to $725. And then the following year, another $75 increase for the 25-26 school year to $800. So as a district, we recognize, in a program, we recognize that it could be a hardship to go immediately to try to go to competitive program fees, but I think, we all think and believe that this is a very manageable step-by-step increase to get to where we really need to be in order for this program to be self-funding and to also be able to attract people to help Mr. Bennett with the teaching. In the last paragraph, full paragraph, it talks about the recommendation for pay increase to try to attract more teachers. So instead of the pay being $18.35 and the average being $32.86, we recommend that in the first year, the pay range for classroom instruction go from $25.44 to $28. And these rates would be determined for the teachers by the director of driver's ed and based on experience. For the lessons, we're recommending the pay range be from $18.35 to $26. And again, the rate would be determined by the director based on experience. Because as Joe was pointing out to us, you know, to be making the same thing with 20 years experience, it doesn't make sense. But at the same time, by increasing program fees, we would be able to pay people at an appropriate experience level and attract more staff for the program.
What's the budget's contribution to?
It's a self-funded program.
So, I mean, this is
not a program this district has to run.
No, but I'm saying like we have, this isn't in our budget at all except for the stipend.
Right.
So why are we, I mean.
Because you set the fees. The school committee set the fees.
But it has nothing to do with school programming.
But it does because, like, they're insured through us.
The cars are.
There are employees.
I mean, to me, I say charge whatever you think the market allows you to get, because you don't want to have it so high you just, I mean, at $800, is that competitive with private and other things around here? And
5 years ago, I paid $1,000 for my.
Right, but I'm just saying, if
I was going to say,
people are going to pay it, why would I mean,
We want to be, first of all, school committee votes on fees, last I knew.
Yeah.
yeah, but it just always seems like
But
fees for things we contribute to. Or,
we want this program to be successful and self-funding, and in order to be competitive with the other area schools that might be pulling kids from us, we don't want to be as expensive, but we want to be
Right.
self-sufficient.
I'm just saying, if, for example, well, I don't know, Mr. Bennett, if you have, like, you know how a lot of kids go to Marblehead School because they can get an automatic, like, RMV, someone comes to them to do the RMV.
Correct, yeah, so
test.
they have, why Marblehead can do what they do, so driving schools can do alternative hour tests, happen on
Right,
weeknights and on
right.
weekends. You need a list of at least 20 students in order to do that, so they're essentially utilizing their students who finish their program. Our kids go there, and they pull kids from other communities to
Right, but
essentially
I'm
get to
saying,
that list
but I'm
of 20.
saying, so my point is, if our program is like, let's say, $100 less than their program, it's almost worth it to do their program so that you get that benefit of having that R&B when you want and not waiting. Like, I think,
That's an additional fee. So whatever you pay to go to Marblehead, after that, there's an additional fee for them to schedule that test, provide the sponsor, provide the vehicle.
and that's just like what our students pay that jump over there. They pay that additional fee.
Their entire program is $900, and then if you wanted to do the alternative hour tests, that's somewhere between, I think they charge $125 for their students that go from their program to start to finish.
Yeah.
Any student who wants to go to them that didn't do their program pays $150. So that the $900 does not include the
So
total
this is
cost.
still, so this is still
So it's still
cheaper.
better.
I mean,
Wait,
Because I know where you're coming from, because
I'm just
we
saying.
don't want to decrease the amount of people using it, and then it's not self-funding anymore all
Right,
of a
like
sudden.
that's like, right,
You don't wanna
just
price
wanna,
yourself
like, price
out of
yourself
it.
out of this.
Right, I get what you're saying.
Because I say, charge whatever you.
Yeah, charge the market
yeah,
rate.
You know
Right.
better what the going rate
Right.
is and what you can get, but I just wanna make sure enough kids keep doing it, that it's still self-funding.
Well, it sounds like we've tried to keep, or from what Mr. Bennett's saying, we're trying to keep this in line with the other, would you say, 10 schools that have the in-school program?
I would say the goal was to keep in line with them. They were data points. None of them were on the North Shore. The only one that was is Reading. And that was kind of more of a community program. It wasn't solely for high school students. So really the only true comparison and where I know we lose students to is to Marblehead Auto School.
Right.
who's
You know, and we
paying-
were
who's
talking
driving.
about the repairs to the car, potentially going electric, at some point. So those are the costs that, if anybody watching wants to know, why we're increasing,
Right.
that's why we're increasing. But I think it's a very
We pay to lease the vehicle, we pay to lease the vehicles?
The program does.
Right.
So the tuition covers.
covers all
the-
that. But I'm saying,
So what the
No,
tuition doesn't pay
no,
for
I'm not-
is a decent wage.
I'm not arguing at all, I think.
Yeah, no, I think we
charge
should do
1,000,
it, yeah.
Charge 2,000, whatever you think you can get to keep the program running.
Right.
I mean,
well, we think this
Right.
is a sensible incremental increase that will keep the number of families we have, if not grow it. I mean, I think it's very reasonable. So, we were trying to be sensitive to not jumping from 575 to 800.
No, I agree.
that's
I
all.
agree
Yeah,
the
totally.
$75 increment is.
So the price that we're looking at the bottom, 650, 725, 800.
Yes.
So the 650, is that inclusive of their driving hours?
Yes.
Boy, I'm stupid. I just paid for my kid to go over to Marblehead, and $600 was just for the driving.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're driving is $600, their class is $300. Our breakdown currently is $150 for the class, $425 for the driving.
Yeah, we're undercharging.
How do you spread the word to your sophomores, if I remember?
I send out an email pretty regularly. I
And
would
it
say-
goes to all families,
But
whether you want to be on it or not, which I
Yeah.
love.
So I use Aspen, obviously that's our means.
Right.
And I typically target people within the age range that can do driver's ed.
Right.
I periodically will get, because these go out all the time. So
Right.
I'll get an email from a senior or a senior parent asking, and it's, they maybe they transferred in later and didn't see
Right.
that information, or they just weren't interested at that point in time. But I use Aspen as
Yeah.
a
Okay.
regular tool for communicating with students and families.
so if you're doing the classes too in the summer, they're open to, are you
Since we-
willing to do beyond
high school students
So
too?
we do, the registry has some parameters around that. They're really, they consider like like 18 and above is considered a commercial driver. We could do that, but our capacity is so limited that taking on anything other than a teen who's looking to get their hours in, I have to say no to.
But you did say we were getting students from other schools, right?
Yeah, so yeah, totally transitioning to weekends, that's where every driving school is. So I said, we have to get there too. The 7 a.m., as convenient as it is, because our students are so busy, after school, weekends, so on and so forth, we were seeing our numbers kind of dwindle. So when I've gone to weekends, I've seen close to double the numbers, if not almost triple.
Awesome.
So can I ask you one more question? Just
Sure.
So is the hope here that by the fee increase, you're going to get more folks helping with the driving instruction so kids can
Get through the program faster.
get through the
Yes,
program faster?
driving
Is that one of the goals
Yes.
here?
That is the goal. I mean, anyone I can talk to about being a driver's ed teacher, typically people that I work with in the building,
Don't
I
want to make $18 an hour.
But when they hear the hourly rate, it's like, ugh. So we
Yeah.
just hired somebody the other day. I sent out an email about 3 weeks ago, kind of a state of our driving school, just because I understood people's frustrations. I get emails all the time about what's going on with lessons, and we are dealing with the same issue that every business is dealing with everywhere. I have friends in other communities emailing that live in other communities saying, can you take these are my long-term friends, can you take my son and daughter for driving lessons? I grew up with these people, and I say, I can't. And they essentially saying their driving schools are having the same issue. But I think we're in a unique position to attract more.
Yeah.
More interested, the goal would be try to get somebody who's already licensed from another driving school, because the process to become an instructor is 45 hours, which they are volunteering their time for that, and then they have to take a test where they have to get a 90 to pass. So it's a big commitment just to say yes. So there has to be something on the other side of that commitment to say, I can deal with the 45 hours that I'm giving up to become an instructor.
So I don't want to stand in the way of change, but to Suzanne's point, in some ways, I think the ramp up is slow.
I agree with you, Amy. Suzanne, I almost think we should just,
Or that you do it in 2 years.
In two maybe, or something.
yeah, I agree.
Like,
So that's-
And we do, some driving schools do payment plans, and we do. I mean, I can be
Yeah, I
as
was gonna say
flexible.
payment plans
I can be
or-
as flexible as families need us to be. There's tons of capacity within Unipay for them to pay by the lesson. Of course, it's more work for me, but if we're getting people to where they need to be, we're meeting them where they are, where their finances are, I'm totally fine with that. So we are very flexible within payment plans.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because I would imagine that you were part of it with Cheryl.
yeah, Cheryl, Joe, and I were part of this. This is my recommendation.
So the 3 years versus 2?
I'm on board with that.
Are you on board with that?
Um,
I don't mean to put you on the spot. I know your boss is right here,
yeah,
sorry.
yes.
Well,
So,
and I'm
my
concerned that
apologies.
Cheryl's not here to be
Yeah.
part of this conversation. We worked on this. This is what we were comfortable with as district leaders. This is my recommendation. If you're tasking me with going back and coming back with another proposal, then I will do that, and we'll table this one for
Well,
tonight.
I guess maybe another way to ask what I think you're asking is, will the 75 accomplish what Mr. Bennett wants to accomplish?
Yeah, like, will that give you enough money
Right,
to do more
exactly.
hiring faster?
I would like to say yes, but
I'm assuming Cheryl
I
looked
mean,
at
I
that.
suppose we could always revisit it at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
And say, we're jumping it up next year, rather than 75, it's going up 150.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this isn't a contract. Clearly,
Yeah.
we can change it any time.
Right. I mean,
until that rate is part of a job description and it gets out there.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Okay,
my gut feeling is yes.
Okay.
I could call Marblehead or any other privately owned place and say, hey, what are you paying your instructors? They can say, I'm not gonna tell you, and hang up. So I don't know if it's
All right.
going to. I think yes.
And we can change the price really at any time. So, I mean, my thought is, I mean, I agree, I think it should be in 2 steps versus 3. if we want to hear from Ms. Stella, we can. I'd at least, I'd like to do 2 steps, actually.
I mean, the memo says that with this 3-year increase, that year 1, they can increase the classroom instruction to 28 and the driver to 26. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's
So
what the
this
memo says.
the hourly rates are going up.
Right.
At the same
So-
time that the program fees are going up.
Right,
So,
That's what we're asking you to vote on tonight.
I
right.
think I would make a motion to accept this as it is,
Okay.
and then we can, I would make a motion to accept this
I would second it.
proposal.
I'll second that, yeah.
All right, great.
And Cheryl did say when we met, this is the outline now. We can certainly
Yeah,
revisit in
yeah.
a year.
When we see what happens,
It's
right.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor of accepting the new fees for driver's ed? Raise your hand. All opposed? It passes unanimously to the new fees.
And this would go into effect June 1st.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for driving with our kids.
Yes.
Always my pleasure.
Oh. Is it?
A little bit of sarcasm right there. All right, thank you. All right. Thank you for that informative presentation. Oops. All right, so moving on, subcommittee reports, meal charge policy.
That shouldn't have been on this again,
Okay.
because we were waiting to hear about free lunches or not, and,
Okay,
Can I make a motion to move straight to the consent agenda?
yeah, I did an update already,
Okay.
so.
sure, okay. So the consent agenda is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business of the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any item or items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Tonight, we have regular session minutes from April 13th, executive session minutes from April 13th. We have we have 5 donations as well. And as we do, if you would allow me to read the donations?
Yes, on the first donation, I've had a request to change how the grant is to be used to be allocated to Mr. Doolett and his media arts program. So I'd like to note that I received an email from these donors asking for it to be dedicated to him.
That's the Hankins Family Fund?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. So then, just to dovetail, as a committee, we'd like to thank the Hankins Family Fund for that donation. We appreciate it. The donation is for $1,000. We very much appreciate their generosity. And just skipping to the next one, we have a donation from Paul Gorgon and Rachel Ruth, scholarship for the 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. It's personal donation. The estimated value is $50. And again, the donation is a scholarship for 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip, which I think we all know is just an amazing, amazing opportunity. Next, we have a donation from Matthew and Kristen Rydell. Again, scholarship for the 8th grade D.C. trip. The Rydells have donated $250.
Riddell.
Very generous donation.
Riddell.
Excuse me. Again, the donation is to scholarship for the 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. To the Ryddells, thank you very much. Again, we appreciate any and all community involvement. And next, we have a donation from the Geron Family Foundation, scholarship for the 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. Again, the organization is the Geron Family Foundation, and they are donating $2,000. The donation is, again, a scholarship for the 8th grade Washington, D.C. trip. Incredibly generous. That is a lot of money. Thank you, really from the bottom of my heart. That is just great. And then lastly, once again, I should say, the Geron Family Foundation, this is for CPR certification for staff, a very important aspect of everybody. And the donation for the CPR certification for 81 staff members is $10,125. Again, just to repeat, $10,125. Wow. Thank you from to the Geron Foundation. Incredibly generous, a very important donation. CPRs never know when it's going to be needed, and the more people who have that certification and that training, the better. So thank you very much to all our donors. And then lastly, may I ask for a motion for the school committee to go into executive session after this meeting, and we will not be returning to public session.
I'll make the motion.
Can someone second,
Second.
please? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
That is aye. There is none opposed. It is unanimous, and we will move to executive session.
That means you guys are close.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.